Chapter 508. Destruction was always easier than construction, but for the demon spirit dream, a huge dream that lasted for 2,000 years, it was not easy to completely destroy it. At least for the two king pill cultivators, it was a fantasy. Even if the two exhausted the power of their primordial spirits, it was impossible to shake the foundation of this dream, but Wang Lu happened to have a tool in his hands that could reverse the situation. The demon jade that should have been consumed in the demon realm, the proof of the king of the demon realm. If it was the group of degenerates in the desert tribe, I wouldn't have much confidence in making the demon jade work. But in the demon spirit dream, all the demons will gradually restore their original appearance, and this setting is instead a trap of their own making. But directly destroying the dream with the demon jade is likely to cause the outbreak of the black tide, so be careful. Ouyang Shang reminded. Well, I understand. Before completely destroying the dream, we must first find a way to solve the black tide. I have a little experience in this regard. The root of the black tide is the negative emotions of the people in the dream. If we can provoke the two sides to kill each other, we can get twice the result with half the effort. Ouyang Shang asked, provoke the two sides to fight? What's the specific operation? There are two solutions. One is to break the concealment of the black tide in the demon spirit dream, so that the soldiers in the dream can clearly realize the existence of the black tide. After that, it is not difficult to disguise the black tide as a part of Fenrir or something else. But there are two problems with this method. One is whether the demon king will allow me to make such a big move in the demon spirit dream. Once he finds out, it is likely to detonate the black tide in advance. At that time all our plans will be in vain. The second is to let the demons fight with the black tide, which will only accelerate their negative emotions such as pain and fatigue, and strengthen the black tide. It may not be able to achieve the effect of mutual destruction. Ouyang Shang nodded. The analysis is reasonable. Then what about the second plan? The second plan is relatively troublesome. The root of the black tide is negative emotions. If we can cut off this negative emotion or even produce positive emotion, the black tide will naturally be weakened. Ouyang Shang nodded again. The theoretical analysis is good, but... He reached out and pointed to the top of his head, and a drop of black viscous liquid dripped not far from him. That was the result of the blood of the demons flowing like a river on the battlefield. After the blood seeped into the soil, it seeped all the way down for more than 100 meters. In such a tragic battlefield, if it weren't for the Demon King's dream-building technique that completely stripped away the negative emotions, no one would be able to hold on for long before collapsing, let alone the positive emotions. There's still a way. Wang Lu said, I don't know whether you've noticed it or not, but in this demon spirit dream, the negative emotions of demon fighters were completely stripped off after death and before rebirth. Ouyang Shang said, Indeed, I noticed that when they were charging and breaking through the enemy lines, they could actually feel the pain even when they were seriously injured. I saw with my own eyes a demon who was cut in half at the waist screaming loudly on the ground for a long time. But not long after, when he came back to life, he was full of energy, as if he could not remember what had happened not long ago. Yes, that's the problem, Wang Lu said. Normally speaking, no matter how mentally tough a person is after experiencing a serious injury and death, there will always be a period of mental malaise, but these demons are full of vigor as soon as they are resurrected. Obviously, all the negative emotions were stripped off after the resurrection. Figuring out these links gave me the opportunity to act. I want to let the demon spirit dream not only eliminate negative emotions, but also add positive emotions, that is, add positive energy. Add positive energy? For example? For example, Wang Lu took a breath, took out the demon jade and stimulated it with his magical power. Then, with the power of the demon jade, he forcibly launched a dream-building technique. The fluctuations of the spell were not strong, which meant that its impact on the demon spirit dream was limited. However, there was a saying in this world that a small spell could also play the role of reversing the universe. It was just that Ouyang Shang had not thought of the specific operation method. Therefore, he was also very curious about the effect of Wang Lu's spell. When Wang Lu finished the spell, he pondered for a while, and then made a gesture with his hands, and a void projection lit up between his palms. There was a milky white light in the projection, showing the process of the demon warriors dying on the ground and resurrecting in the sky. When Wang Lu saw it, he couldn't help but be surprised. This is the dream-building technique? When did you learn to do this? Regarding the dream-building technique, due to the limited time, Wang Lu only briefly introduced it to Ouyang Shang. He never took out the scroll for him to read carefully, and the previous Ouyang Shang did not have much interest in it. His current swordsmanship was broad and profound, and he needed to spend a lot of energy to study it. How could he have the time to learn the dream-building technique? But the technique used by Ouyang Shang was recorded in the dream-building technique. Moreover, even Wang Lu hadn't looked at it seriously, so where did he learn it? Ouyang Shang said, "When I saw you unfold the scroll, the patterns on it changed and there were a few small spells that didn't seem difficult. I casually wrote them down and unknowingly learned them." Wang Lu was extremely surprised and felt that his three views were faintly refreshed. The previous generation's eldest senior brother's perception was simply heaven-defying. Just based on his ability to learn and comprehend, he was even better than him. Such a talent had fallen 100 years ago. No wonder the surviving elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall would never be able to forget this. If this guy continued to live, just as he was thinking, he heard Ouyang Shang's exclamation. "Damn, junior brother Wang Lu, is this what you mean by adding positive energy?" In the projection between Ouyang Shang's palms, there was a sacred milky white light, and hundreds of demon warriors were in it, their eyes lost. That was the middle station of their countless reincarnations. Every time the warriors died in battle, their souls would rise from the earth, enter the sky, and after a brief blank, they would be thrown back into the battlefield, constantly fighting. However, this time after the soul rose, it was no longer a blank, and they saw an unprecedented scene. It was a pure and holy palace, carved out of pure and flawless white jade. In the middle of the palace was a long dining table, on which countless delicious dishes were piled up. There were golden and juicy top-grade steaks, colorful, round and jade-like fruits, and exquisite and unique dessert cakes. For the demon warriors who were born in desert tribes and were extremely short of resources, this was a magnificent scene that they had never seen even in their dreams. What shocked them even more was the rows of demon girls around the dining table. They were graceful in the prime of their youth, with skin as smooth as water, and skin as red as blood. Their facial features were exquisite and did not lose the majesty of the royal family. Two small fangs slightly protruded from their mouths and pressed against their lips, looking very tempting. Moreover, unlike other royal families who always wore heavy armor, they only wore a layer of transparent gauze, the beauty of which was faintly discernible, making people's blood boil. If the dining table in the palace was shocking to the demon warriors, then these girls were simply thunder from the ninth heaven, blowing their souls away. Before they entered this bloody dreamland with their demon spirit bodies, they were all born in desert tribes, living a poor and difficult life for decades. There was no lack of opposite sex in the tribe, and they encouraged childbirth. However, due to limited conditions, most of the female demons appeared dry and haggard, and aged extremely quickly. If they only stayed in the tribe for the rest of their lives without broader knowledge, perhaps they would not feel that there was any problem. But now that they had seen the real stunning demon beauties in the palace, they only felt that their outlook on life had collapsed. There are such beautiful women in the world. Just looking at them from a distance makes my blood boil. It seems that they are more attractive to me than men. Yes, I have never understood what is so wonderful about women. Now I realize that I have lived for thousands of years in vain. Hey, you are saying this in front of me, your close comrade who has accompanied you for 1,000 years? Where is your conscience? Sorry, I think I still like women. Well, in fact, I just realized that I do too. The scale of the palace was extremely magnificent, and the space inside became even more vast and boundless. On both sides of the long dining table, the seats stretched as far as the eye could see. The male warriors were slightly at a loss, but they were full of expectations as they sat down. Needless to say, the young girls approached them to serve them and enjoy the delicacies. The delicacies on the table were tempting, but how could they compare to the beautiful girls beside them? It was just that the demon warriors were still somewhat at a loss about the current situation, and did not dare to act presumptuously. They just followed the arrangement of the girls and slowly tasted the delicacies, but they were somewhat tasteless. But after a while an even greater shock came. They saw some of the girls put down the food in their hands, lightly got under the dining table, kneeled down in front of the demon warriors, and then gently opened their cherry lips. The supreme enjoyment descended. The demon warriors on the dining table only felt a warm touch sweeping through their bodies like a tide, and penetrating into their bone marrow. Even their souls seemed to melt, and they felt like they were floating in the air. And just as they were about to die from ecstasy, the other serving girls also approached with a charming smile. They took off the veil on their bodies and expressed their intimacy in the most direct way, becoming presumptuous. Thus, a ridiculous show was staged in the hall. This is your positive energy? Underground, Ouyang Shang raised his hands to maintain the projection, and then looked at Wang Lu with a solemn expression. What's wrong? Wang Lu was baffled. You think it's not hot enough? I think it's good enough. According to the standards of the demon race, those girls are first-class beauties. When I was molding them, I also conveniently referred to a certain pair of fallen royal sisters of the demon race. I'm sure they will have a different kind of temptation. I'm not talking about the problem of whether it's hot or not. Wang Lu slapped his forehead. I understand. You think I only care about men and that's sexism? Ah, look here. As he said this, he reached out and touched the projection on Ouyang Shang's palm. Suddenly the scene changed. Then Ouyang Shang saw that the same situation appeared in front of the female demon warriors. Rows of handsome and delicate, but there was no lack of strong and muscular demon youths lined up in a neat line, respectfully waiting for the arrival of the female warriors in the Pink Palace, and then using their own means to please them. I also built a lily palace and a chrysanthemum palace to provide for the unique taste of demons. I wonder if you're interested in taking a look? No, thank you. Wang Lu said. In short, from now on, every brave demon race warrior who dies in battle will enjoy this treatment. They will enjoy endless delicacies and 72 virgin boys that they can pick as they please. After experiencing this scene, the fear of death will be greatly reduced, and even replaced by endless expectations. As long as they die once, they can feel good, and after that, they can be resurrected and continue to feel good. Believe me, from now on, these demons will become unafraid of death. The so-called negative emotions have long disappeared. Look, some of them have already begun to shout Allahu Akbar. Chapter 509. Although Wang Lu's dream-building technique seemed absurd, it hit the nail on the head. A beautiful construction of the world after death suddenly made the demon warriors face death calmly. Anyway, every time they died, they would be resurrected and everything would be perfect. Even the pain at the time of death would be completely stripped away. So, what was there to be afraid of? What's more, even if there was no pain, compared with the supreme enjoyment in the palace, the pain of death was nothing to be afraid of. Although the royal family of the demon realm could not completely ignore pain like the Flaming Valley warriors, their tolerance to pain was also extremely amazing. Wang Lu's positive energy soon produced an effect. The killing atmosphere on the battlefield of the demon spirit dream was almost swept away. The demon warriors descended from the sky, talking and laughing, and many of them still had a look of extreme joy on their faces. Then they casually picked up their weapons, prepared their spells, and threw themselves into the battlefield. In battle they became braver than ever. Not only did they not fear death, but they also had a vague desire. Many people rushed into the darkness in a suicidal manner, using a completely uneconomical way to consume the energy of the invisible devil. Then the long-awaited palace appeared in front of them. Such a wonderful thing, who would care about death? While these demons were high in joy, positive emotions were born and began to disintegrate the huge black tide. So, the black tide that had been growing for 2,000 years finally stopped growing and began to decline. In this regard, Ouyang Shang had to sigh after a long silence. What the F*ck, there were thousands of words that could not be said. Only this F*ck could express the emotion in Ouyang Shang's heart. When he analyzed that the black tide should be digested with positive energy, Ouyang Shang also realized that he should make a fuss in the sky. The content was nothing more than how to make them feel happy. But Ouyang Shang's first reaction was to instigate a sense of honor, a competitive mechanism, and so on. As a result, Wang Lu directly taught him a lesson with tactics. If you want people to face death calmly, desire may be more useful than honor. But after lamenting the advanced means of Wang Lu, he must face the next problem. For the black tide that had been accumulated for 2,000 years, the positive energy provided by tactics seemed to be huge, but in fact, it was only a drop in the bucket and it could not last for too long. The novelty of delicacies and women would eventually fade. What would he do then? Don't worry, I have a full set of plans here. When food and lust lose their effects, it's time for this system to come into play. Hehe, it's fortunate that this is a dream, that's why I can ignore common sense and construct this thing. As Wang Lu spoke, he began to activate the demon jade again, constructing new content in the demon spirit dream. Ouyang Shang curiously switched the scene and saw that Wang Lu had built a new hall. In the middle of the hall there was also a long table, but there was no more delicious food on the table. Instead, there were only strangely shaped rectangular plates. On the surface of the plates, gorgeous pictures could be reflected, and the pictures were of different styles. In addition, there was a board covered with many small squares on the table, and a small piece shaped like a mouse. What is this? Ouyang Shang was baffled. Internet cafe. What? It'll be very troublesome to explain in detail, but in short, you just need to know that this is a place that can give people endless enjoyment, and at the same time cripple people. As Wang Lu spoke, he began to add more details in the hall. A bowl of steaming noodles and a cup of clear spring water were added to each seat. At the same time, the hall became filled with smoke and it was full of a choking smell. Ah, it's done. After the system officially goes online, I will set the rules. Those who die due to decapitation can enjoy 1 hour of entertainment in the internet cafe, those who are smashed to pieces can enjoy 2 hours of entertainment, and those whose souls are scattered can enjoy 3 hours of entertainment. Those who are especially miserable will also provide overnight service. I believe that those demons will persevere and try their best to die inhumanely, and they will never get tired of it. It's really amazing. Ouyang Shang sighed deeply. But this system also has a weakness. If you receive a strong electric shock during the entertainment period, you may permanently lose interest in the internet cafe. But no one will randomly discharge electricity at this time, right? I believe that most people don't even know what this system does. Hey, that's the best. Next, as long as I add a few more instructions and completely solidify the system I designed, even the last Demon King himself will not be able to save the situation, and can only sit and watch the black tide collapse day by day. Ouyang Shang nodded and did not speak again. Although Wang Lu painstakingly added these two major systems, and it did indeed turn the black tide from prosperity to decline, but how could the accumulation of 2,000 years be ordinary? Even if he stimulated more positive energy without enough accumulation of time, it would be difficult to really shake the huge black tide. Using the dream-building technique to spy on the black tide, the scale was simply breathtaking. In contrast, Fenrir, who occupied half of the world in the demon spirit dream, seemed small compared to it. In fact, these demon warriors had already unknowingly created an even more terrifying opponent. It was just that they themselves were still ignorant of it. Perhaps compared to the new demon world mentioned by Wang Lu, the scale of the demon spirit dream was not worth mentioning. However, based on the current scale, perhaps no cultivator in the whole world could contend against the black tide with their own strength. At least, one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League would have to go all out to suppress it. Thinking about it this way, in Wang Lu's timeline, it was not difficult to understand why Lingjian school was completely annihilated. Among the 5 uniques, Spirit Sword sect was the weakest. If it was Royal Soldier sect or 10,000 Arts sect, they might be able to barely suppress it, but Lingjian school would have to risk their lives. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shang suddenly felt a bit strange. According to Wang Lu, after the tragedy in the Savage Land, almost all the people in Lingjian school died, and only a few younger generation disciples survived. Then, how did they maintain the title of 5 uniques? It should be known that with the current strength of Lingjian school, it was barely hanging on the threshold of the 5 uniques. If all the elders died, it would immediately fall to the second rate. Although 150 years later Lingjian school began to gradually rise, the sect produced many talented people, and the cultivation base of the elders became unfathomable, but how did they spend the 150 years in between? Although these problems were only minor details in the current situation, since he had thought of them, he might as well spend some time to think about them. However, just as Ouyang Shang started to think, he suddenly heard Wang Lu groan, his whole body trembled, and his 7 orifices overflowed with blood. Damn it, I've gone too far. Upon hearing this, Ouyang Shang didn't ask any more questions. He immediately used the earth escape technique and sank deeper into the ground. It only took him a moment to figure out the situation. When Wang Lu said that he had gone too far, he must have been discovered by the last Demon King when he was consolidating the order, and the strength of the backlash was beyond his expectation, which put him in an extremely disadvantageous situation. So much so that he couldn't even use the dream-building technique to withdraw from the demon spirit dream. Because, if he had the time to curse, he should first think of a way to withdraw from this dangerous place. Wang Lu had never been such a reckless person. He dared to be so bold in the demon spirit dream, making such a big fuss of course because he had something to rely on, including the magical demon Jade as well as the teammates around him. It was because Ouyang Shang was also around that he could safely and boldly take risks. At the same time, once there was an accident, Ouyang Shang must be able to make up for it in time. The implication of that foul language was actually for Ouyang Shang to take action. And Ouyang Shang did not fail to live up to his expectation. His reaction was fast. Without the slightest delay, he used his earth escape technique to travel hundreds of miles in a flash. In a flash, Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu had already sunk to an unknown depth underground. At the same time, The two of them could vaguely feel that there was a huge shadow above their heads, which completely engulfed the vast space. That was close. After Ouyang Shang finished, he began to try to use the new dream-building technique. It was also a small trick that he happened to see in the scroll, so he casually understood it and used it to get out of the dream. But as soon as Ouyang Shang had the idea, he was stopped by Wang Lu. It's useless, the other party has blocked the dream. Acting rashly will only expose our position. In other words, if we don't act rashly. Wang Lu barely managed to catch his breath at this time. He is not omnipotent in the dream. He is just the creator and manager of the dream, not the absolute ruler. With the demon jade, I should have been able to fight for higher authority than him. Unfortunately, in the past 2,000 years, he has made new breakthroughs in the dream-building technique and caught me off guard. But now that his management authority has been blown up by me, there is finally room for breathing. Ouyang Shang pondered, if his ability in the dream is limited to what he has just shown, there is indeed room for mediation. At least my earth escape technique can run fast enough, he can't catch up with me. Thinking of the escape technique of 100 miles in a flash, Wang Lu understood more why when Ouyang Shang realized that the situation had changed, his first reaction was to escape into the ground instead of other places. When his earth escape technique was fully displayed, it was simply heaven-defying. Whether it was the speed of reaction or movement, it had completely exceeded the limit of the king pill cultivators. Perhaps even a Yuanying stage cultivator would find it difficult to have his terrifying explosive power. It was as if the whole earth was protecting him. Well, I have been fated with the earth since I was a child. Ouyang Shang simply explained, although it is not an earth spirit root, when practicing the 5 elements of magic, the effect of earth magic is always particularly good. Wang Lu smiled and said, so why don't you change your name to Ouyang Di? We can be considered a couple. In short, I will do my best to buy time for you. As for how to break through the other party's blockade and get out of the demon spirit dreams, Wang Lu took a deep breath, leave it to me. If force doesn't work, I still have a lot of tricks. With that, he once again took out the demon jade. The jade contained a chaotic red color like a hungry beast. Chapter 5:10. In terms of the comprehension ability of the dream-building technique, Ouyang Shang was actually better, but the current situation did not allow Ouyang Shang to divert his attention to study the dream-building technique, because the only thing that could delay time in the demon spirit dream was his earth escape technique, and he had to use the earth escape technique with all his strength. Moreover, Wang Lu had come into contact with the dream-building technique earlier and had a deeper understanding of it. He also had the 5 spirit blood crown jade in his hand, so the heavy responsibility of using the dream-building technique to fight against the Demon King fell on him. Of course, it was not easy to break the Demon King's dream blockade. Wang Lu immersed his mind in the dream-building technique, using the demon jade to strengthen the effect of the dream-building technique, and constantly worked hard to tear apart the barrier of the dream space. During this time, the last Demon King was in hot pursuit, and the darkness continued to spread through the earth. Every time it exploded, it would engulf everything within a radius of several miles, and this explosion came almost without warning. Every time, Ouyang Shang had to rely on his intuition to react at the critical moment, and then use the earth escape technique to travel 100 miles in an instant to barely dodge it. Every dodge was extremely difficult. If there was a third party watching the battle, they would definitely think that Ouyang Shang would be caught in less than 10 dodges, because the difference in strength between the two sides was too obvious. It was a huge gap that no genius or fortuitous encounter could bridge. However, until the 100th dodge, Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu were still alive and kicking, and had not been engulfed by the darkness. Although Ouyang Shang was sweating profusely, his mana fluctuations were still at their peak, even stronger than when the battle began. Ouyang Shang actually became stronger the more he fought, and his perception of the explosion of darkness became more and more acute. Every time he used the earth escape technique, he was even more timely, and after the 100th dodge he was even more relaxed. He even had the leisure to care about what was happening on the other side. How is the situation? I still need time. Don't worry, time. I have as much time as I want. As he said this, Ouyang Shang once again used the mana in his body to connect with the earth, fusing himself and Wang Lu with the earth, and instantly appeared 100 miles away. The next moment, the darkness exploded, and a heavy muffled sound came from the depths of the earth. It was the sound of soil and rocks colliding after everything in the large space was engulfed. Separated by a thick layer of earth, the sound was vague and hazy, but Ouyang Shang felt his heart become heavy. Such shocking destructive power, but what level was that Demon King of the last generation? At this time Wang Lu had just finished a stage of his work. He let out a long sigh and said, to be able to descend upon the devil realm, of course, he must be a top expert of the devil realm. But if he really is a peak expert, yes, if a body integration stage perfected Lord was here, we would have died long ago. No matter how amazing your earth escape technique is, it would be useless. Traveling 100 miles in the blink of an eye was indeed an amazing ability, for Taoist King Pil. If it was a conjoint body perfected Lord, even if he did not rely on immortal spells or divine powers, he would be able to achieve the same thing just by relying on his well-tempered body. Coupled with the difference in the quality of their essence souls, it was impossible for Ouyang Shang to escape. So there are a few possibilities. First, the devil realm 2000 years ago was already too weak to withstand a single blow. The so-called peak powerhouses were only at the level of nascent soul or soul formation. Secondly, His Majesty the Demon King had been suppressed by Fenrir for 2000 years and had long been squeezed dry. His strength was not even 100%. Thirdly, he was in a deep sleep when I woke him up, and he hasn't fully woken up yet. Ouyang Shang sighed. Junior brother Wang, why don't you just say 4? Wang Lu smiled. Fourthly, he deliberately let us down to make us lower our guard. Is that so? Ouyang Shang tilted his head, and then once again merged with the earth, dodging the devouring darkness. Although he was calm, it was still thrilling. Then he really hit it well. If he didn't do that, how could he deceive the two of us? For what? Wang Lu waved the demon jade in his hand. Of course it's for this. Apart from this, what else could the two Taoist King Pil have that is worth His Majesty the Demon King wasting his energy on? That makes sense. The Devil Realm's King's proof has now fallen into the hands of a human. If I were the Demon King, I would definitely not be willing. Moreover, you could constantly cause trouble for him in the Demon Spirit Dream with the Demon Jade, so you are obviously a thorn in his side. Snatching the Demon Jade is the top priority. But he can't be sure that I have done something to the Demon Jade, so he didn't act rashly. He is waiting for me to think that I am safe, thinking that his attention is on you so he can rest assured and use the Demon Jade to start the second stage of the dream building technique. At that time he can quickly snatch the Demon Jade. At that time, senior brother Ouyang, no matter how sharp your intuition is, after adapting to his previous rhythm, it will be difficult to quickly change the rhythm and keep up with the reaction. Ouyang Shang smiled bitterly. With the means of a mere Taoist King Pil, it is not easy for me to keep up with this rhythm, okay? And listening to you, it seems that to break the dream blockade we must use the Demon Jade, and as long as we use the Demon Jade, it will leave a flaw for him to snatch it? So next, I will have to trouble you to do me a favor. Let's really do something to the Demon Jade for him to see. As soon as the Demon Jade leaves my control, destroy it immediately. Destroy it? Well, we can't get it back after it is taken away anyway, so it is better to destroy it together. Although this thing is the condensation of the demon world's law, it is not indestructible. I happen to know several ways to destroy it, such as... With that, Wang Lu handed the Demon Jade to Ouyang Shang and was about to demonstrate the method to destroy it. However, at this time, a dark shadow suddenly flashed out. Its speed was simply incredible, completely beyond the reaction limit of Taoist King Pil. However, Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang reacted in advance as if they had foreseen it. One of them launched his non-phase sword defense, while the other launched his earth escape technique, which was several times more effective than before. Both of them managed to block the Demon King's all-out attack. In the blink of an eye, the two appeared in the depths of the ground hundreds of miles away. Ouyang Shang's face was pale and his whole body was trembling. Wang Lu was bleeding from his 7 orifices. His right hand, which was holding the sword, was strangely twisted from the elbow. His non-phase sword bone had been impressively broken. However, compared to the achievement of escaping from death, these injuries were not worth mentioning. Especially in the momentary exchange of blows just now, the two of them had more or less figured out each other's details. The other party was indeed far above the two of them, but at this moment he was also burdened with a strong restriction, so he did not dare to use 90% of his ability. Just now he had to hold back halfway, not daring to go all out. Therefore, in the final analysis, the other party had nothing to be afraid of. At the same time, the Demon King, who had been hiding behind the scenes, also changed his strategy and walked to the front of the stage. What a wonderful performance. The fluent pronunciation of the common language of the 9 regions, coupled with the young and gentle voice, swept away the previous life and death atmosphere. A demon wearing a red cloak and a black armor walked along the dark passage in front of the two of them. His 2 scarlet pupils were like burning flames, which reflected his face. Sure enough, It was the same as what they had seen in the demon world. This last demon king who had ruled the demon world 2,000 years ago was an ordinary young demon who looked like a child. However, the aura of a monarch descending upon the world was overwhelming. The demon king sighed with emotion. After 2,000 years in the human world, I can't believe that there are so many rare talents in 9 regions. They are even better than the elites in the great war of immortals and demons. It's really enviable. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu frowned and said, "That's strange. How do you know about the second great war of immortals and demons?" According to his previous understanding of the demon king, he should still be in the demon world during the second great war of immortals and demons. Using the wreckage of the eternal tree as the foundation, he tried to turn the tide and calm the chaos of the demon world. Until all the efforts failed, he would lead the survivors to build a new demon world. During this period, those demon world creatures who were out of their reach and involved in the chaos of the law entered the 9 regions along the space passage, triggering the second great war of immortals and demons. The demon king's entry into 9 regions should be after the construction of the new demon world was completed. However, listening to his words, it seemed that there was something hidden about the matter of that year. Wang Lu was thinking about how to find a way to get information from the other party's mouth, but then he saw the demon king chuckle. Isn't the reason very simple? More than 2,000 years ago, how could those irrational mobs turn the 9 regions upside down? Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang sucked in a mouthful of cold air at the same time. Did this guy admit that the great war of immortals and demons 2,000 years ago was planned by him? At least he was deeply involved in it? This was quite different from the statement of the later demon king. Wang Lu didn't think that the demon king's sisters had the need to deliberately deceive him. In other words, they were also kept in the dark by the former demon king? But what was the point of doing this? However, just as he thought of this, he saw another shadow flashed in front of him. The demon king actually made his move again. This time, Ouyang Shang's reaction was very fast, but Wang Lu was slightly slower by half a beat. Fortunately, non-phase method was really marvelous. Even if the cultivator himself was absent-minded, his subconscious defense was still watertight, and he even prepared in advance. After a collision and an escape through the earth hundreds of miles away, the 2 young cultivators appeared. Although their injuries were more severe, they still managed to withstand a round. Amazing. The seemingly young demon king followed them in the dark. This time you guys really exceeded my expectation. Wang Lu coughed up blood softly and sneered, "You're also beyond my expectation. Tell me honestly, what exactly are you?" With that, the demon jade in his hand bloomed with dazzling red brilliance. "You didn't notice it, did you? Just now, when we fought, I used the demon jade to lightly illuminate you." Although there's no law blessing, it's impossible for any demon to be indifferent to the illumination of the proof of the king. "And you? Are you really a demon?" Wang Lu finally sorted out his thoughts and voiced out his doubts. "Looking at the several major events that you've experienced, there are too many doubtful points in your actions. You're not a demon, right?" "Ah." The young demon king burst into laughter. "Do you want to know? Knock me down and I will naturally tell you." Darkness shrouded them again. Chapter 511. In the underground world of the demon spirit dream, the cruel pursuit continued. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang fled in the front while the demon king chased after them. As Wang Lu raised the key question, the temporarily maintained communication channel between the 2 sides was instantly severed. The demon king was no longer interested in talking to them and instead went all out to pursue them. This time, the pursuit became thrilling, because the demon king's suppression of his own power became smaller and smaller. His method of attack became more and more strange and varied, and the power of the eruption of darkness became more and more powerful. Many times, Ouyang Shang really relied on a bit of luck to take Wang Lu to avoid the eruption of darkness. With the continuous increase of the demon king's attack power, Wang Lu could no longer use his non-phase sword to fight for a buffer. That would be a dead end. Therefore all the pressure was on Ouyang Shang. The battle in the underground world became a stage for the demon king and Ouyang Shang to fight. And Ouyang Shang really withstood the pressure. Whether it was the eruption or the luck, he was always able to avoid the demon king's pursuit. After a few rounds, the demon king suddenly stopped. He looked at Ouyang Shang seriously with a bit of playfulness in his eyes. "Oh, it turns out that you have a lot of luck on your body. The whole earth is blessing you. No wonder you're so slippery. Unfortunately." Before he finished his words, Ouyang Shang felt his vision go black. His keen intuition continued to warn him that a life and death crisis was coming, but he had no way to deal with it. On the other side, Wang Lu also felt that a crisis was coming. However, in this desperate situation, a trace of inspiration burst out from him. The moment before the Demon King made his move, Wang Lu suddenly raised the Demon Jade above his head. He was not trying to trade the Demon Jade for his own life, but rather to stimulate the power within it, making it burst out with an unprecedentedly strong light. When the light lit up, the Demon King's complexion suddenly changed. He immediately cancelled the magic that was aimed at Ouyang Shang and turned his attention to Wang Lu. However, he was still a step too late. The momentary delay allowed the Demon Jade in Wang Lu's hand to burst out smoothly. The Demon King helplessly put down his hand. He was quite surprised by this little fellow's reaction speed and agility. The other party had seen through the predicament he was facing. The Demon King was suppressed by the demonic wolf Fenrir. Now the battle in the dream seemed to be unlimited, but once it was detected by Fenrir. Hey, this demon spirit dream could be hidden from her for 2,000 years because she knew nothing about the dream building technique before. If she knew the existence of the demon spirit dream in advance. Taking advantage of the brief moment when the Demon King stopped, Wang Lu decided to go all out. He placed his other hand on the Demon Jade on top of his head and exerted all his strength, causing the light to become even more dazzling. It was as if he was afraid that the noise was not big enough to alarm the demon wolf that was suppressing everything. Enough, stop it. We're going to be blinded. Fenrir's voice came as expected, but the source of the voice was on Wang Lu's chest. The next moment, Wang Lu looked down at his chest incredulously, only to see a fine wolf hair caught in the folds of the red and white robe. The wolf hair trembled slightly, floated down, and then quickly grew into a wolf-eared girl in midair. Wang Lu was astonished. It's you? The wolf-eared girl moved her ears. It's me, who else could it be? Haha, don't I look beautiful in your dream? With that, the girl turned around in a circle. Her naked body was beautiful. Compared with the terrifying dark figure in the cave, Fenrir, who appeared in the demon spirit dream, looked like a 14 or 15-year-old girl. However, from the extremely gloomy face of the Demon King, it could be seen that this little girl had a powerful deterrent. With Fenrir's appearance, it seemed that all the crises had been resolved. However, there was still a problem for Wang Lu here. Have you been following us? Otherwise, how could we come so timely? With that, Fenrir smiled proudly. When you told me about the dream-building technique, I guessed what he was plotting. But it's no use thinking that we can't catch his body. And if we come out in person with his slipperiness, he will definitely not show up. But if it's only you two little guys, plus you have the Demon Jade in your hands, he will not be able to bear it. Then you're using us as bait? Then after you're sure that the stupid fish will take the bait, you can appear earlier. Earlier? Earlier I didn't trust you too. Fenrir said lightly. Who knows if he sent the two of you to lure us into the demon spirit dream? We have an absolute advantage in the outside world, but in the dream, it's not necessarily so. What if all this is a conspiracy set by you to trick us into the dream? At this time, the Demon King interjected. You know this possibility, but you still dare to come? Of course, if these two little fellows dare to put themselves in danger, why can't we? And after confirming that you guys are not colluding with each other, I'm more sure to show up. Old friend, it seems that we have won this 2,000-year confrontation. The corner of the Demon King's mouth curled up. What? Are you sure? Just based on the one time in the dream? Not long ago, outside the dreamland? Why haven't Big Brother and the others woken up yet? A young cultivator of spirit sword sect anxiously paced back and forth in the tent. Beside him, a group of junior brothers and sisters also put on a serious face. Several of them even brandished their flying swords. Their killing intent was so thick that it was like a substance, which firmly sealed the entrance of the tent. Outside the tent, there was an endless hubbub. Quickly release the Great Elder. Release him immediately. Don't think that you can do whatever you want. Listening to the roar outside the tent, the pacing cultivator sighed again. Alas, Big Brother and the others are really... They didn't explain anything in advance, but now they left me such a mess. Turning his head back, he saw that in the middle of the tent, the great elder of the desert tribe had fallen to the ground unconscious. Although his life was not in danger, his condition was very bad. It was obvious that he had been killed by someone. The culprit was not far away, lying not far from the great elder. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang were lying side by side, also unconscious. Not long ago, a demon girl who was responsible for serving the great elder in the desert tribe wanted to go in and clean up the tableware for the great elder's lunch. However, when she lifted the curtain, she saw the three unconscious people. Among them, the great elder had a trace of blood on the corner of his mouth, which showed that he had suffered a serious injury. The girl screamed in horror, which alarmed half of the oasis. The first to arrive were the cultivators of the Lingjian school. Before the other angry demons rushed into the tent, they first entered the tent and blocked everything. Although they didn't know what was going on, they knew that Big Brother and the others were facing a special situation or dealing with a difficult problem. At this time they must not allow outsiders to enter and disturb them. Therefore they would rather fall out with the demon race and insist on staying in the tent to protect Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang. As for the great elder of the demon race, he was actually just an unimportant person, but no one was sure how much he had to do with Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang's coma. At this time they could only try to maintain the scene and not add variables. This was naturally intolerable to the demon race, but the huge gap in strength made them unable to take further action. They could only protest angrily outside the tent. Although the human cultivators in the tent were still young and immature, the flying swords in their hands were really sharp. Although they had never really clashed, they knew that if they really fought, the desert tribe would pay an extremely painful price. And this matter was indeed very strange. The great elder and the two most outstanding human cultivators fainted in the tent at the same time. Could it be that it was the curse of the invisible devil? Thinking of this, the demon race did not dare to act rashly. Of course, the sound of protest did not decrease, and continued to exert pressure on the human cultivators in the tent. What the hell is going on? In the tent, the young cultivator who was pacing back and forth sighed again, and as if to vent his anger, the frequency of his footsteps became a bit faster. Senior brother Feng Yin stopped for a while. You're making people dizzy by pacing around here. You're dizzy, but I have a headache. Feng Yin snappily replied. Wang Chenai, this little brat, actually still had the mood to make sarcastic remarks. If it weren't for him and Zhang Xing, these two idiots, peeping at other people's ceremony, causing them to be cursed by the sand poison. How could there be so many things afterwards? Wang Chenai was a very young one in the golden generation. He had a lively temperament and was extremely playful. At this time, seeing Feng Yin's gloomy expression, he giggled and said, Senior brother Feng Yin, you always like to think of everything as bad. But in fact, maybe the truth of the matter is very simple? Feng Yin snappily asked, for example? You see, Big Brother and Senior Brother Wang Lu are lying side by side in an ambiguous posture. Perhaps when they were dual cultivating here, they were unfortunately seen by the elders. Thus, in a great shock, they violently hurt each other, which in turn caused them to suffer a backlash from their own power. Thus, this is what happened. Just as Wang Qinye's voice fell, a young female cultivator in the group angrily said, This is ridiculous. Can't you have something normal in your head? This junior sister's surname was Lin Wan. She had a quiet and gentle temperament and had always been very popular. Hearing her suddenly explode, no matter how lively Wang Chenai was, he couldn't help but shrink his neck. Junior sister Lin, I'm sorry, I was just joking. In the end, Wang Chenai hadn't finished speaking when the angry Lin Wan said again, Both of them are extremely intelligent people. Only if there's something wrong with them would they run into other people's tents to dual cultivate. Wang Chenai was dumbfounded. I always feel that there's something wrong with what you're angry about. According to common sense, you should be questioning why the two of them dual cultivate. Lin Wan rolled her eyes at him. What's so strange about them dual cultivating? Senior brother Ouyang is brimming with talent. No one in the world can compare to him and no woman is worthy of him. These years as our eldest senior brother, he has actually been quite lonely. And although this senior brother Wang Lu appeared abruptly, I can see that senior brother Ouyang really enjoys his time with him, and so does Wang Lu. So, even if they dual cultivate, what's so great about it? Wang Chenai forcefully closed his dislocated jaw. I feel that junior sister Lin, it's really great that you can say these things reasonably. However, when he looked around, everyone's gaze towards Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang, including Feng Yin, had subtly changed. Hey, can you guys not be like this? Chapter 5:12. In the desert oasis, the contradiction was constantly brewing and intensifying. The people in the tent were struggling to figure out the truth, trying to find a way out of the current predicament. For this reason, even the reputation and integrity of their big brother and senior brother Wang Lu could be ignored. Similarly, for the people outside the tent, as long as they could rescue the great elder, they were willing to sacrifice many things. Sacrificing one's life was the simplest way. In fact, during the confrontation between the two sides, there were many warriors who were hot-blooded and intended to use their own blood to prove the integrity of the desert tribe, but fortunately the old guys in the tribe stopped them. The enemy was strong while they were weak. The situation forced the desert tribe to not be hot-blooded. It was easy for a few of them to rush in and commit suicide, but if they provoked the anger of the other side, who could stop them with the current combat power of the desert tribe? Therefore, after a long time, the demons outside the tent were still in the stage of protest. Although the wording was gradually getting stronger, it had no essential impact. Humans, is this the way you self-proclaimed righteous sects do things? We treat you with sincerity and even save the lives of both of you, but you are ruthless towards the great elder. You are simply heartless. Aren't you afraid that when you ascend to the heavenly tribulation, your soul will fly away and scatter? Release the great elder and we can let bygones be bygones. The people in the tent were already tired of hearing such protests. After a while, someone simply set up a soundproof technique at the entrance, and it suddenly became quiet. And a quiet environment was indeed more conducive to people's thinking. Do you think we should call the others? Others? What do you mean? Lin Wan looked at Feng Yin, who suddenly put forward a suggestion. I mean those people in Blessed Fountain. Didn't Big Brother previously establish a base at Blessed Fountain? There should be our 3 teams there, and senior sister Kaixia is also there. If she can come, perhaps there will be a way. Ask for help from Blessed Fountain? Lin Wan murmured, but isn't Blessed Fountain fighting with the Flood Dragon in the final battle? It's impossible to take out manpower, right? Feng Yin said, I just communicated with Blessed Fountain not long ago. Their progress is very smooth. Yesterday they fought a fierce battle with the Flood Dragon and won a great victory. The others were stunned when they heard this. Now that Blessed Fountain has completely entered the harvesting rhythm, it doesn't matter if there is one less or one more person. What's more, the Blessed Fountain base was originally just a frontier base. After the completion of the Blessed Fountain strategy, it was impossible for all 3 teams to stay at Blessed Fountain. Most of them would continue to explore the savage land. They might as well come here and join us. This desert oasis, if we dig deeper, I am afraid it is a place with more potential than Blessed Fountain. Feng Yin's suggestion quickly gained the support of many people. Agreed. Since the current situation isn't something we can solve, it's only natural to bring in new reinforcements. Although the management trainee program this time is to train each of us to be independent, in the face of such a big event, sincere cooperation is fundamental. Seeing that his junior brothers and junior sisters had agreed, Feng Yin nodded. Then I will prepare to write a letter to Blessed Fountain. Unfortunately, the altar is a bit far away. I will have to trouble one of the junior brothers and junior sisters to help me. Senior brother Feng Yin, I suggest you don't do that. When Feng Yin heard this, he was surprised for a moment. Turning his head, he saw that the one who spoke was actually the silent and low-key junior sister Wang Wu. Junior sister Wang Wu, as always, was immersed in cultivation. At this time she was sitting cross-legged. The magical power in her whole body was like a tide. Obviously she was in the middle of cultivating. If Feng Yin hadn't heard it clearly, he really wouldn't have been able to see that it was Wang Wu who spoke. Junior sister Wang Wu, you just said that I should not write a letter for help? What? Wang Wu replied without opening her eyes, because Big Brother doesn't want too many people to get involved in this matter. How do you know? I just know. After Wang Wu finished speaking, she no longer spoke. No matter how Feng Yin asked, she remained silent, which made Feng Yin uncomfortable for a while. However, after so many years of getting along with fellow disciples, he had long been accustomed to Wang Wu's maverick behavior. For her, there was nothing more important in the world than cultivation. Of course, if it wasn't so, with her aptitude and perception, she would never be able to reach this step today. For a long time, whether it was the sect's experiential learning or other activities, she had never come to the front of the stage. She always followed behind others and spent most of her energy on cultivation. As for experiential learning, she was also a fanatic of retreat. More than 300 days a year were spent in retreat at home. She was an out-and-out squatting at home. Just now she took the initiative to speak, which was a very rare thing. For her suggestion, Feng Yin also intended to seriously consider it. The reason was very simple. Because she was personally brought here from Blessed Fountain by Feng Yin and Wang Lu. Moreover, it was not a secret in the Golden Generation that Big Brother was optimistic about Wang Wu. However, if they didn't write a letter for help, would the current situation drag on indefinitely? After all, this was other people's home ground. These desert demons looked weak, but they had been fighting against an incredibly powerful invisible demon for 2,000 years. Once they decided to fight at all costs, could they really stop the thousands of people outside the tent with just these few people? Time passed bit by bit in anxiety. After no one knew how long, they suddenly saw the curtain of the tent move, and a demon race girl came in. Seeing her, one of the several cultivators of Spirit Sword sect was surprised. "Why are you here?" Zhang Sheng stood up and looked at the plump but pure and immature girl at the door in surprise. When the girl saw Zhang Sheng, she smiled happily and then gestured with her hand. "You mean the elders told you to come? The situation is so tense now, what can you do here?" Zhang Sheng was puzzled and at the same time deeply anxious. As he said that, someone behind him blew a whistle. "Junior brother Zhang, control yourself. Don't fall into other people's honey trap and defect to the enemy." Zhang Sheng angrily turned around and said, "You don't need to tell me, I know." "Really? In short, don't do stupid things. Let me tell you, although there are thousands of immortal cultivation paths, controlling your own feelings and acting rationally is the king's way. Of course, I know that you cultivate emotion sword, but love is love. Don't forget the friendship and bromance between us." Wang Chenai shut up. As soon as Zhang Sheng's roar fell, the curtain of the tent opened again, and the second girl came in. She was as hot and sexy as the first one, and had the same pure and innocent appearance. Wang Chenai was still laughing, but when he saw that person he couldn't laugh anymore. He stood up and said, "Aching, why are you here?" That demon race girl also gestured with her hand, which surprised Wang Chenai greatly. "Are you also sent by the elders? Strange, why did they send you here? Really, the situation here is tense and we can't rule out the possibility of fighting. What if you accidentally hurt yourself? Hurry up and go back." "No, I really can't, rest assured, let me send you back." "Hey Wang Chenai, are you the one who defected to the enemy?" However, without waiting for Wang Chenai to explain anything, the two poison-extracting doctor girls made some gestures with a slightly bitter smile. Wang Chenai and Zhang Sheng's faces changed at the same time. Ridiculous. Impossible. Among the few people, only these two had a fate with the poison-extracting doctors, and thus understood the desert tribe's sign language. The others saw the change in the two's expressions and were curious. "What's wrong?" Zhang Sheng shook his head and didn't say anything. He just hugged the demon girl tightly and refused to let go. Wang Chenai was relatively more relaxed. After a sigh, he smiled bitterly again and again. The elders of the desert tribe carefully inquired about the situation in the tent and felt that the three of them were poisoned by the sand, so they were unconscious, and then, they sent them here. Suspecting that the three of them were poisoned by the sand, they sent the poison-extracting doctors? The unfolding of this plot was really delightful. Whether Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang were poisoned by the sand or not, the people present couldn't tell. This sand was invisible and colorless, and only these demons could accurately identify it. Logically speaking, how could the three of them be poisoned by the sand in the Oasis City for no reason? If this city was not safe, these demons would have long been extinct. Therefore, the possibility of them being poisoned by the sand was not great. This was also the reason why they kept the demons outside the tent from the beginning. However, the current situation was that, after so long, the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect couldn't determine the crux of the problem. Of course, because none of them had heard of the existence of dream building technique. Thus, when the desert demons proposed the possibility of the sand poison, they could no longer deny it. Moreover, the desert demons also calmly proposed, "If you don't believe us, it doesn't matter, but at least let us save our tribe's elder." This request was reasonable and difficult to refuse. However, for Zhang Sheng and Wang Chenai, if they wanted to agree to it, they really needed a psychological struggle. The method of poison-extracting doctors was well known. For the desert tribe, this was a necessity for survival, but for these two young people with shallow experience, are there no other poison-extracting doctors? Wang Chenai smiled bitterly and gestured with sign language. The demon girl seriously responded, "Among the tribe's doctors, only the two of us are qualified to extract the poison for the great elder." Damn it, why do we need to pay attention to the qualification for this thing? I'm sorry, if there's nothing else, we have to extract the poison for the great elder as soon as possible. The girl's look was particularly serious. Wang Chenai was speechless. He turned his head to look at Zhang Sheng and saw that his junior brother's complexion was livid, but he didn't say a word. He just let his sweetheart come closer to the great elder. Wang Chenai could not help but sigh with emotion. Junior brother Zhang Sheng was indeed worthy to be a cultivator of emotion sword. If he loved a person, he would love her everything. He could even disregard the cuckoldry on his head. This kind of breadth of mind was better not to imitate. The several other cultivators of Spirit Sword sect in the tent also sighed with emotion. They were afraid that the road of love of Zhang Sheng would be full of troubles, so they didn't care much about the two poison-extracting doctors. At this time, A trace of black light suddenly appeared in the eyes of one of the demon girls. And she was only a few steps away from Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang. Chapter 513. The change of the poison-extracting doctor only lasted for a short moment. The black color in his pupils flashed away, and his slightly stiff movements quickly returned to normal. Regarding this subtle change, 2 or 3 people in the room noticed it, but they didn't care too much. They just moved a few steps and stood between the poison-extracting doctor and the 2 senior brothers. The 2 poison-extracting doctors turned a blind eye to this and stood in front of the great elder. Then they took off their clothes, revealing 2 smooth and delicate naked bodies, preparing for the next poison extraction. The male cultivators of the Lingjian school turned their heads one after another. Wang Chenai and Zhang Sheng, who were at the door, were even more depressed. They simply walked to the corner of the tent and closed their eyes to meditate, not asking anything. However, at this moment, Wang Wu suddenly stood up and stepped forward to stop the 2 demon girls. Wait a minute. The 2 girls looked at her in surprise and tried to explain with their hands, but Wang Wu didn't look at them at all. She just turned her head and asked Feng Yin strangely, "Why did you let them in?" Feng Yin said, "They are here to save their own family." Wang Wu was even more puzzled. "Then hand over the elder. What's the use of keeping him here?" Feng Yin was stunned and then explained, "We can't guarantee that the elder has nothing to do with the 2 senior brothers' coma. Before the truth is revealed, it's best to keep the scene unchanged. This is what the eldest senior brother told us before." Wang Wu said, "That's right, the eldest senior brother did say that the truth of the matter is not clear, so we should try our best to keep the scene unchanged, so we must not let outsiders in, let alone the 2 of them. You. The eldest senior brother has always had high hopes for you, and even when he is not here, you are the leader, but is this how you do things?" Feng Yin's mind was confused by Wang Wu's questioning. In his impression, junior sister Wang Wu had never been so aggressive. No, she had never even spoken so loudly. Wang Wu was considered to be at the bottom of the golden generation due to her lack of aptitude. If it weren't for her extraordinary efforts and the eldest senior brother's special treatment, she wouldn't even have the qualifications to be ranked in the golden generation. And she had always been self-aware. Other than cultivation, it was cultivation. In the golden generation she was like a transparent person, but now, junior sister Wang Wu, what are you trying to say? As an elite talent second only to a handful of people in the middle sequence of the golden generation, when had Feng Yin ever been pointed at and questioned like this? But he also knew that Wang Wu wasn't accusing him for no reason. No matter what, he had to listen to her reason. Wang Wu frowned even more. "Do you still need to ask?" "They are the poison-extracting physicians of the devil race." And then? The dispute between the 2 quickly attracted the attention of others, especially Wang Chenai and Zhang Sheng, who stood up angrily and cast a stern look at them. They didn't know much about Wang Wu, and their friendship with each other was mediocre. Even because of her cultivation base, they were quite critical of her being ranked in the golden generation. At this time, when they heard her openly accusing the 2 poison-extracting physicians, their hearts were even more indignant. Wang Wu turned a blind eye to this. When she was on the mountain, she was indifferent to the various gazes of her fellow disciples. It wasn't that she was self-aware, she just didn't care. And at this moment, she also didn't care how other people thought of her. She just wanted to say what should be said. As for how they would judge later, it had nothing to do with her. They are poison-extracting physicians, and they remove the sand poison for the people of the tribe by mating. All of us have heard of this, right? Wang Chenai said, "Yes, we all know, so what? You want to say that they..." Wang Wu glanced at him, and her clear and cold eyes made Wang Chenai, whose cultivation base was higher than hers, speechless for a moment. "I want to say, haven't you ever thought that when they remove the sand poison for others, where is the extracted sand poison?" While everyone was stunned speechless, Wang Wu continued, "The sand poison is in their bodies, and as the best poison-extracting physicians in the tribe, they have accumulated the most sand poison. In my opinion, they are no different from weapons full of poison. You actually let them come in and let them get close to the 2 senior brothers? This isn't it too serious?" Wang Chenai argued, "It shouldn't be that dangerous, right? Haven't they always been living well in the tribe? Isn't it enough that their living place is independent of other people's gathering area? Moreover, the essence of the sand poison is a curse, and since it's a curse, in theory it can be induced by people. Even the poison-extracting physicians can't help it." Wang Chenai felt that his throat became even drier and he could hardly speak. "But, this is just your guess." Wang Wu nodded, "It's just a guess, so if you still want to gamble, I can't do anything about it." But as long as I'm here, I will never allow them to move freely here. After saying that, she ignored the others and directly stepped forward to push the two poison-extracting physicians away, ignoring the two girls who were desperately gesturing to explain that they had no malicious intent. At the same time, she also ignored that Feng Yin and others had not fully digested what she had just said, and had not expressed their support for her point of view. Wang Wu's thinking was very simple. What should be said had been said, and what should be done had been done as much as possible. If Feng Yin and others were really stubborn and insisted on doing things against her way of thinking, she could do nothing about it. At worst, the brothers and sisters would have a fight. Of course she was no match for them, but she had done what she could. If she really couldn't do it, it had nothing to do with her. Even if her senior brother came back, she couldn't be blamed. If she could, she really didn't want to take the initiative to do these things. She didn't have the cultivation aptitude of Feng Yin, Zhang Xing and others. Every inch of time was extremely precious, and she wished she could use it all to cultivate. As for the other things, she would leave them to the senior brothers and sisters who had spare energy to do them. But, why were they so stupid? They couldn't even see through such a simple plot? In fact, at this time Wang Wu was somewhat too harsh on Feng Yin and others. As the younger disciples of the Lingjian school, they had been cultivating in seclusion in the mountains all year round, and had very little experience. Usually, once they encountered a difficult and complicated disease, it was mostly Big Brother Ouyang Shang who would come forward and handle the situation. The others had almost no experience in taking charge of things alone. This was the biggest reason why the sect decided to send them to the Savage Land for the management trainee program. If everyone was as good as Ouyang Shang, there would be no need for any training. At this time, suddenly encountering an unexpected situation in the demon tribe, Feng Yin and others inevitably became impatient and couldn't maintain their calm. Even though they forced themselves to calm down with their immortal heart cultivation base, many details of thinking were still slow. Only a person like Wang Wu, who was naturally indifferent, would be completely unaffected by the environment and think one step ahead of others. But it was only this step. Wang Wu saw the risks of the two poison-extracting physicians, so she took the initiative to come forward and try to expel them from the tent. At this time she ignored one point. Among the group of senior and junior brothers and sisters, her cultivation base was at the bottom, so what qualifications did she have to rush to the front? The next moment, the eyes of the poison-extracting physician girl closest to her completely turned black, and a black aura soared up to the sky. The strong power deterred everyone on the spot. Caught off guard, even Feng Yin let out a muffled groan. He felt his vision blur and his five senses were all polluted. For a moment he couldn't exert any strength at all and even felt drowsy. Wang Wu was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. Although she was fully prepared, she had already raised the power of her Shudan to the peak when she was talking and pacing, and the middle-grade magic weapon given to her by the sect was already in front of her in advance. However, the moment the pitch-black demonic flames rose, she was directly sent flying. Her body flew straight out of the tent, tumbling all the way, smashing through a few thick walls of the city before stopping in the midst of the rubble. However, she was already unconscious, and it was unknown whether she was dead or alive. Aching! What are you doing? Wang Chenai was horrified. He rushed toward the demon girl who suddenly erupted her power. His cultivation base was only above average among the group, but in a moment of desperation he burst out his potential and recovered faster than Feng Yin. During the process of rushing, the thunder-flying sword, which he was used to, had already flown out of his sleeve and was held in his hand. More than 10 talismans with different functions were refined by his primordial spirit, and they surrounded his body. In an instant he was ready to fight. In front of him, the demon girl, Qing, who had just been in love, stared at him with her dark pupils and a faint smile. Don't go over. Feng Yin transmitted his voice through primordial spirit and burst out with a roar, stopping Wang Chenai in time. Protect the two senior brothers and don't worry about anything else. Under this shocking change, Feng Yin recovered his rationality. The sudden eruption of the demon girl was obviously controlled by someone behind the scenes. The other party was definitely not plotting against them, but the unconscious Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu. Therefore, the most important thing at the moment was to watch over the two of them. They didn't know much about the demon race and the sand poison, so it was difficult to judge the strength of the other party in a short period of time. They could only guess that the other party should be about the same as them. Otherwise, there was no need to disguise and hide, and they could just directly crush them, and in the case of unknown details, caution was the most important quality. Perhaps if Ouyang Shang was here, he would have enough courage and boldness to gamble in a radical way, but Feng Yin didn't dare. He had self-awareness. Zhang Xing Wang Chenai, you two go save junior sister Wang Wu, the others and I will set up the array. Protect the two senior brothers. Zhang Xing and Wang Chenai were not weak, but at this time the opponent was their lover. With their young temperament, it was inevitable that they would be affected, especially Zhang Xing, who was an emotion sword cultivator. It was hard to say what he would do, so it was better to send him away. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve, which was good for everyone. Zhang Xing silently nodded to show that he accepted this order, but his eyes never left his beloved. Wang Qinya's lover, Qin, had already transformed, and the demon girl beside her also had her pupils covered in darkness, and was only one step away from transforming. Chapter 5:14. The change in the tent has been noticed by the people outside. When Wang Wu was sent flying, she dragged down a small half of the tent, and the situation inside was clearly visible. The sudden outbreak of the two poison-extracting physicians shocked everyone. Before this, it was true that because of the sand poison, the poison-extracting physicians lived in seclusion in the city, but there had never been a poison outbreak. If this had happened earlier, the desert tribe would not have let the poison-extracting physicians live so close to them. What does that invisible devil want to do? There was a lot of discussion among the crowd, and their anger quickly brewed. In their view, this situation was undoubtedly a trick of the invisible devil, trying to use the sand poison to divide the relationship between the human cultivators and the desert tribe. However, knowing was knowing, there was no solution at all. The wisest person in the tribe was now lying in the tent. The other elders had discussed for a long time, and the idea they came up with was nothing more than to send the poison-extracting physicians in. As a result, as soon as they went in, something happened. Right now, the group of elders was like a group of dragons without a leader, completely in a state of confusion. No one could make a decision at all. However, there were many enthusiastic demons outside the tent who loudly gave advice to the human cultivators inside. Splash them with cold water. Let them calm down. Yes, they are born with resistance to the sand poison. As long as they wake up, it will be fine. There were also some who pleaded with the human cultivators not to kill them. Please don't hurt them, they are only temporarily controlled by the invisible devil, they don't mean to hurt you. For a time, hundreds of people had their own opinions, and the outside of the tent was in a mess. However, the people inside the tent had no intention to pay attention to the chaos outside. The outbreak of the two poison-extracting physicians brought a heavier and heavier sense of oppression. Although they never made their move as the sand poison warehouse, how could Feng Yin and the others dare to take it lightly? All kinds of purification and defensive spells that they learned in the mountain for decades were cast out, for fear that the other party would release the colorless and odorless sand poison when they were unprepared. Whether these defensive spells could work or not was completely unknown. The spiritual pressure made the cultivators consume their magical power faster. In the confrontation between the two sides, the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect were undoubtedly in a passive position. However, Feng Yin was indifferent to this. He just sat in the array motionless like a mountain. They could afford to stall for time because it was clear that the demons were rushing for time. They sent poison-extracting physicians as human bombs. This was not an upright tactic. It was more like a helpless act of stealing chickens. Moreover, after junior sister Wang Wu discovered the danger, she didn't immediately turn against them. Instead, she just tried to drive them out. It was them who made the first move, resulting in the current standoff. This undoubtedly meant that they had to get the results as soon as possible. They couldn't afford to delay. Since the other party couldn't afford to delay, then they had to do their best to delay. Very smart. Unfortunately, there's no stage for you to display your cleverness today. Step down, ants. Vaguely, Feng Yin seemed to hear someone sneer. The next moment, one of the two poison-extracting physicians suddenly showed a painful look. He bent down and covered his mouth with both hands, but the black blood still gushed out uncontrollably. At the same time, the noise outside the tent suddenly quieted down. Looking around, he saw hundreds of desert demons gathered outside. Most of them showed an extremely painful expression, and thick black blood overflowed from their 7 orifices. This blood didn't cause the loss of vitality. On the contrary, Feng Yin, who was in the center of the defensive array, could clearly sense that the pressure from outside the tent was rapidly increasing. Those demons who were exhausted under the pressure of the invisible demons were injected with new strength. There was even a black gust of wind blowing outside the tent. Senior brother Feng Yin? Lin once said with some uneasiness. Don't panic. How could Feng Yin not see that the situation was rapidly deteriorating? But at this moment, there was no better choice than to defend. They couldn't leave. The black blood overflowing from the 7 orifices of the demons continued to flow, solidifying and hardening on the surface of their bodies. After a while, it formed a whole set of rough but unusually solid heavy armor. At the same time, the king's aura that once deterred many races in the demon realm gradually returned. In the blink of an eye, the desert tribes, which were still weak, had become a powerful force that could not be underestimated. The strong pressure made Feng Yin and others not dare to act rashly. Among the hundreds of demons outside the tent, there were hundreds whose strength was above the shoot-on stage. In the past, they were exhausted and their realm was not a threat, but now it was soul-stirring. Now I completely believe that they are all descendants of the royal family of the demon realm. Feng Yin frowned and whispered to himself, but is this atavism? The power that has been squeezed out for 2,000 years has returned. Why? It was the invisible demon who deprived them of their power, and no matter how he looked at it, the invisible demon had no reason to stand on the side of the demons against them. Feng Yin only felt as if there was a huge shadow shrouding his head, and the heavy pressure was suffocating. Senior brother, please wake up quickly. Now what are you going to do? In the demon spirit dream, the demon king stretched out his hand and opened a window in the void. What he saw outside the window was the change that had taken place in the desert oasis. Hundreds of demons who returned to their ancestral state surrounded Feng Yin and the others. The eyes of these gentle demons were already full of ruthlessness, as if they were hungry beasts, ready to make a move in front of their prey in the tent. As you can see, I have stimulated the ancient blood of these children. Although they will not live for long, they can still do a lot of things before they die. With that, he also took the initiative to turn his head and look at Fenrir, who was in the form of a girl. I also want to thank you for the curse that you have been holding for 2,000 years. Without it as a medium, I would not have been able to stimulate the blood of so many people at once through the poison-extracting physician. Fenrir simply ignored him and only treated the demon king as if he did not exist. Wang Lu sneered and said, "Those idiots think that all this is the work of the invisible demon, but they don't know that the real mastermind behind everything is the ancestor that they worship as gods. They are indeed a group of wastes who deserve to perish." The demon king coldly snorted. "There is not much time. It is better to advise you to make a decision early." As the demon king spoke, he closed the window and glanced at the opponents in front of him. Suddenly he frowned. "However, it seems that you have made a decision?" Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang sneered in unison. "Kill you and everything will be solved." "Yes, that's right. So, I won't play with you guys anymore. You guys stay here and kill whoever you want." After saying that, the demon king's figure flashed and disappeared without a trace. Although Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang were fully focused, they still couldn't make him stay in time. After the two missed, Wang Lu immediately used the dream-building technique and tried to break the dream blockade. Ouyang Shang couldn't intervene, so he turned to Fenrir and said, Just now." Fenrir in the form of a girl snorted. "You want to ask why we didn't make a move just now?" Ouyang Shang was stunned for a moment. After thinking for a while, he said, "I want to say that you look really beautiful like this." "Hehe, I think so too." "Wait, I'm not asking you to flatter me with flowery words. I already made a move just now. Otherwise, do you think he ran away by himself? If I hadn't swallowed him, you two little guys would have been beaten to death by him. How would you be qualified to talk to me here?" "Hey, so it turns out that his soul was destroyed just now and that's why he disappeared? Your Excellency is really worthy of being a god-level powerhouse. Your attacks are natural and leave no traces. Okay, what I swallowed just now was just a clone of him and it was a dream clone. His real body is still hiding in the ninth abyss. Although he can't escape, there is nothing we can do about him. This demon spirit dream is completely beyond my control. I can't break through the dream blockade. He uses the dream as a bridge to communicate with the outside world and I can't stop him. So if you want to save people, you have to rely on yourself." Wang Lu said and spat out a mouthful of foul air with a heavy smell of blood. "But I still need time to break through the dream blockade here. How much can you help with the things outside?" Fenrir said, "You want me to save people? I can, but why do we have to do this?" The demon wolf Fenrir had never been a race that was close to people. In front of Wang Lu, she put on a delicate and lovely girl's appearance, but that was because Wang Lu had a familiar smell. If it was Feng Yin and the others, she would definitely not swallow them because they were dirty. Because saving them is saving yourself. Wang Lu gasped and said seriously, "Since you have been following me for so long, you should be able to see the black tide. How do you feel about the power of the black tide?" The smile on Fenrir's face gradually disappeared. "Do you really have a way to eliminate the threat of the black tide?" Wang Lu stretched out his hand and pointed upward. The arrangement above is to eliminate the black tide, and it has already begun to take effect. Unless he is willing to detonate the black tide before it is fully formed, otherwise even if he has great ability he can only watch the power of the black tide decline day by day. As long as I am here, the arrangement that I solidified with the dream-building technique cannot be changed. His previous dream of 100 years has left too many flaws. Fenrir frowned slightly. Although I don't quite understand, you want to say that as long as you are not dead, the threat of the black tide will gradually decrease. But if we don't save people, you are likely to die with your friends, and I will also die in the outbreak of the black tide? Wang Lu nodded. In fact, in the real history line things were likely to develop like this. Otherwise, with the amazing power of an adult Fenrir who could destroy it. Fenrir pondered for a long time and finally shook her tail. She chuckled. Well, I will help you. However, when Fenrir was about to make a move, she was suddenly stopped by Wang Lu. Wait a minute. I suggest not to kill. Why? I'm worried that there is a trap. Wang Lu explained. That guy died so cleanly and without any backup. Don't you think it's too simple? It's like waiting for me to beg you to save people. With that, Wang Lu took a deep breath and then patiently said, Just now, I used the dream-building technique to perceive the demon spirit dream, and my understanding of the black tide has deepened. Right now, this black tide is only a fine line away from maturity. It's also my good luck that if I came here 3 to 5 days later, he would have really succeeded. And it was precisely because he was about to finish his work smoothly that he was somewhat lazy, which gave me the opportunity to take advantage of. However, my current arrangement is not enough to weaken the black tide too much. Once there are any variables, it is likely to induce it to mature in advance and then completely erupt. Fenrir touched her ear. It's really troublesome. According to what you said, it's not right to kill him, but it doesn't seem right to not kill him either. What should I do? Wang Lu pondered. The Demon King left these descendants most likely because he wants you to kill them and use them to generate strong negative emotions and quickly enrich the black tide. So it's better to do the opposite. Do the opposite? Oh. Wang Lu pointed to the sky and smiled without saying a word. Chapter 5:15. I say, junior brothers and sisters, can any of you explain what's going on? It was still a small oasis city. Outside the tent of the great elder in the center of the city, hundreds of devils still surrounded the tent tightly. However, the previous murderous aura had been swept away, replaced by a pink aura that was hard to look at. Hundreds of demons who had just condensed their blood into heavy armor at this time, withdrew their armor, revealing their naked bodies, and then gathered in groups of 3 to 5, entangling their bodies together. Of course, there were a few who couldn't find their companions, so they simply kept the tent's pillars and continued to rub against each other, enjoying themselves. Then lazy and sticky moans rose and fell one after another, interweaving into a sonata that made people blush. Is this a magical psychological attack? In the tent, a cultivator of spirit sword sect could not help but ask. Feng Yin, who was sitting in the middle, cautiously nodded. Perhaps. So you must guard your primordial spirit and not be confused by this chaos. As soon as his voice fell, a high-pitched moan and scream came from outside the tent. Several men and women who were entangled could not help but twitch, as if they were struck by lightning. At the same time they raised their heads high, their eyes turned white, and saliva dripped from the corner of their mouth. This scene, no matter how one looked at it, was like a certain phrase that started with a high and ended with a tide. Is this also part of the illusion? Feng Yin said, perhaps, it's used to further confuse us? In this way? Feng Yin continued to try to explain, perhaps the customs of the demon race are different from ours? Or, Lin Wan hesitantly guessed, Senior Brother Feng Yin, I feel like they seem to be taking drugs? Taking drugs? Yes, the Great Elder once said that there is a drug called 5 stones powder in the mortal world, which seems to be like this when taken. Feng Yin was even more confused. I know 5 stones powder, but although the effect is not that strong, the nature is similar. In short, do you think they awakened their blood and then surrounded us just to take drugs for us to see? Perhaps they want to lure us to take drugs together? When Lin Wan said this, she also felt that it didn't make sense at all, but she couldn't understand what these demons were doing. You a bunch of idiots. At this time Wang Wu's weak voice came from outside the tent. This is obviously Senior Brother's doing. He has created an opportunity for you. If you don't leave now, when will you? Feng Yin was suddenly enlightened by Wang Wu. At this time, those devils are in an abnormal state. No matter what the reason is, isn't it a good time to escape? Unfortunately, he didn't react in time and almost missed the opportunity. Retreat. Actually, there was no need for Feng Yin to say anything. Lin Wan and the others had already retracted the array formation and were fleeing at full speed. The human wall outside the tent was useless. The demons, who were still ferocious just a moment ago, were completely immersed in inexplicable pleasure, completely ignoring the escape of the human cultivators. Several cultivators of Spirit Sword sect unfolded their magical treasures, launched their methods, and escaped from the desert oasis as fast as they could, flying toward the endless desert in the distance. Which direction should we go next? Feng Yin, who was at the head of the team, asked loudly. Blessed Fountain. Wang Wu, who was carried on Wang Qinye's back, reluctantly raised her hand and pointed to a direction. It's over there. That's the nearest safe place. There's a fortress that senior brother personally arranged. Feng Yin was originally determined to go to Blessed Fountain. At this time, listening to Wang Wu's suggestion, he made up his mind and flew straight there. That's interesting. What is this white powder? In the demon spirit dream, Fenrir looked at the pile of white powder in the hands of Wang Lu with interest. Just now, she poured this white powder into the body of the desert demons through dream-building technique, and it immediately produced a wonderful reaction. After the ancient bloodline was stimulated by the demon king, the strength of those demons soared, and their will became firm. They could not help but be immersed in the pleasure of nothingness, wantonly squandering the few remaining years of their life. According to the design of the demon king, these demons were abandoned by him and should die in a fierce fight. They would attack the sword array of the Lingjian school like moths flying into the fire, and then drown the young cultivators of Spirit Sword sect by virtue of their large number advantage, and then die from the overdraft of their vitality. The anger in the fight, the pain of overdraft of life. These were a huge amount of negative emotions, which would become the last brick to complete the black tide. The design of the Demon King was so interlocked that it seemed almost impossible to solve. Unfortunately, Wang Lu found the flaw in the first place. The body of the Demon King was sealed in the 9th depth prison. The demon spirit dream was the only bridge for him to communicate with the outside world. In the dream, he stimulated the ancient bloodline of the descendants of the demon race in reality. This process was seen by Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang. Then Wang Lu pretended to break through the dream blockade with all his strength, while Ouyang Shang used this as a cover to flip through the dream-building technique scroll. In the shortest time he found a similar spell, and by virtue of his heaven-defying level comprehension, he mastered this spell in the first place. Then Wang Lu provided the ammunition, the mysterious white powder that could make people want to die. Then Fenrir provided the power and Ouyang Shang built the bridge. The mysterious drug that existed in the demon spirit dream was directly used in the minds of those desert tribes. It was also interlocked and none of it was missing. White powder. It's just an insignificant trick to make people die from positive energy. If it weren't for the Demon King who opened the bridge between the dream world and reality, our last-minute dream-building technique wouldn't have been enough to project the existence of the dream world into reality. But in the end, everything is going according to plan. These demons have been completely crippled. Before they died, they made the last contribution to the disintegration of the black tide. It can be said that they died a good death. There will be almost no new growth point in the black tide, and even if the incomplete black tide explodes, its destructive power is relatively limited, but... Fenrir gently swayed her tail, but things obviously won't end so easily. That guy is really cunning. He actually hid it from us for 2,000 years without revealing any flaws. Before, we always thought that he had no chance to turn over, but in the end... Wang Lu said, if it weren't for me, a time traveler, to change the history, you would have really been turned over by him. And considering the tragedy of the Lingjian school in the real history line, Wang Lu believed that the Demon King's means were not limited to that. No, to be precise, perhaps he should no longer be called the Demon King. The demon jade that symbolized the proof of the demon world's hegemon had no effect on him, which really showed the problem. Unfortunately, he had no clue what his true identity was. How much do you know about that guy? Fenrir shook her head. I have already told you what I know. There is nothing new to ask. But I am very curious. You two little guys, especially you, seem to know him quite well. But it stands to reason that he has been suppressed by me for 2,000 years. Since you were born, it is impossible for you to see him. Wang Lu inwardly sighed, thinking that it was really difficult to cover up the brilliance of a time traveler. During this period, some of his predictable reactions were easy to leave flaws. Especially since this senior monster wolf was meticulous, it was really difficult to hide anything in front of her. On this point he could not be mentioned in the same breath as the mottled dog Quan Zhuhua, who also had the bloodline of a monster wolf. Fortunately, Wang Lu had a reason to temporarily avoid this sensitive issue. The dream blockade has been broken. After a long period of effort, the border blockade of the demon spirit dream was finally lifted, and Wang Lu immediately slipped away. Sorry, now my primordial spirit and physical body are too far apart. If I don't go back now, I probably won't be able to go back. After that, Wang Lu left the demon spirit dream with Ouyang Shang, leaving Fenrir in the form of a young girl in the same place with a slight pout. Hey little guy, you slipped away fast, but you really think you're smart. It won't be long before we meet again. After that, she gently raised her head, revealing a wry smile. You left so fast I didn't have time to tell you that guy? I don't know when he escaped from the 9th Abyss prison. Alas, those idiots, they thought they were smart and almost killed us. Wang Lu sighed, feeling angry and funny at the same time. Feng Yin and others really knew how to seize the opportunity. They made a prompt decision and left neatly. It was just that before they left, they did not think that the primordial spirits of Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang were imprisoned in the demon spirit dream and could not immediately follow them. They carried the bodies of the two people and ran very fast, but they did not know that the connection between the body and the primordial spirit was almost torn off. The two lead disciples were reduced to wandering ghosts from then on. Fortunately, Wang Lu broke the dream blockade in time, and at the same time, the strength of the two people's primordial spirits was far stronger than the ordinary king pill, so their primordial spirits persisted and did not disperse all the way back to their bodies. And when their primordial spirits returned and their consciousness resuscitation, no one knew how long it had been. Big brother, you finally woke up. When Wang Lu opened his eyes, he was already in the fortress of Blessed Fountain. He heard a burst of surprised cheers in his ears. Unfortunately, the focus of the cheers was not on him, but on the person beside him. Feng Yin, Yang Fei, Kai Xia, and the others mostly surrounded Ouyang Shang and asked about his well-being, but they were slightly cold to Wang Lu. After all, the former was someone who had been cultivating with them for decades, and they were like brothers. However, there was still one person who chose to stay by Wang Lu's side. Yo master. Sister. Wang Lu chuckled and greeted the girl in front of him. At the same time, he sighed with emotion that he almost accidentally called her master. However, after he woke up, Wang Wu directly closed her eyes and began to re-enter the rhythm of cultivation, completely ignoring Wang Lu's greeting. This cold reception made Wang Lu miss the time when he was cultivating on the mountain, the master who coveted his hundreds of millions of assets and did not hesitate to propose to him many times. Alas, when you were young, although your moral integrity was full point, you were really not cute. In any case, this trip to the desert had finally come to an end. Although it was not a complete success, there was important progress. The real murderer of 100 years ago had finally surfaced, and one of his biggest killing moves, the black tide of demon spirits, had also been abolished. The next thing to do was to gather all the forces that could be gathered and completely crush him. However, at this time, Wang Lu suddenly heard Yang Fei saying to Ouyang Shang, "Big brother, we just received a letter from senior brother Lu Xian. A junior brother has gone missing in the Ghost Weeping Forest. They have been looking for him for a long time, but they still couldn't find him, so they had no choice but to ask for help here." The management training of Lingjin School had a great risk factor. It was common for the disciples to explore the savage land by themselves and encounter danger. However, upon hearing this news, Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang simultaneously felt a chill on their backs. Chapter 516. The disappearance of a disciple of Spirit Sword sect in Ghost Weeping Forest. For a management trainee plan full of risks and variables, it was a common occurrence. When the sect drafted the plan, it even reserved 1/10 of the death quota, which was simply pulling up seedlings to help them grow. However, Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang intuitively felt that things were not that simple. For them, intuition had always been an important reference for action. No matter how vague or even absurd the content of intuition was, it must not be ignored. Therefore, after hearing the content of the letter conveyed by Yang Fei, the two of them frowned and began to think about the possible secret behind this matter. The missing junior brother was Wang Donghua, the backbone of the Golden Generation. He was good at faking foreign objects, and his skill in controlling objects was at the top level in the Golden Generation. His life source magical treasure, the Golden Nucleus Puppet, was even more wondrous and could be called a life-saving weapon. How could such a person suddenly be lost in Ghost Weeping Forest? At the same time, Yang Fei was still immersed in the joy of his two senior brothers' resuscitation, so he didn't notice that their faces had become worried. When he spoke, his mood was still quite relaxed. That kid Wang Donghua always likes to rely on his many magical treasures to go to dangerous places to court death. Previously, when he was in Mount Qingyun, he was restless and repeatedly lost and was then rescued by the elders. Unexpectedly, after coming to the savage land, he still hasn't changed his bad habits. Ghost Weeping Forest, I remember it is the intermediate goal of senior brother Lucien. Right now they haven't even built their first base, but he ran to Ghost Weeping Forest alone, really? Before he could finish his words, Kai Xia angrily slapped him on the back of his head. Do you know how to speak? Your own junior brother is in trouble, yet you still take pleasure in his misfortune? Being slapped, Yang Fei shrunk his neck and somewhat indignantly muttered, "What could happen? This is not the first time that Kid Donghua has done such a thing." Before they set off, the elders have helped him advance the golden nucleus puppet to spiritual treasure, which can save his life. At this time he is most likely lost somewhere. When the time comes we will search and rescue together. Kai Xia coldly humphed. Good, then why don't you take the lead to save people? Are you just idling here? Hey, I am now the person in charge of Blessed Fountain Base. If you let me take the lead to leave my post and run to Ghost Weeping Forest to save people, do you still want this base? Kai Xia unceremoniously ridiculed, you, the person in charge, staying here will only add to the chaos. During this time, from the base operation to serving the two senior brothers, aren't I the one who single-handedly took care of everything? Ever since that flood dragon was executed, you haven't played any role. Whenever you encounter something, you would only shout and wrangle, and then with bloodshot eyes, you would clamor to run to the desert to avenge senior brother. Hey, whose eyes are red? Yang Fei was exposed by Kai Xia, and his face seemed to be on fire. Don't talk nonsense. Kai Xia expressionlessly took out a recording crystal from her mustard seed bag and said, Oh, I knew you wouldn't admit it. Hey? Yang Fei had always been tolerant of Kai Xia. At this time he was stimulated to the point that he couldn't take care of himself. He grabbed the crystal stone and said, Don't go too far. Kai Xia still wanted to say more, but she heard someone next to her finally couldn't help but shout, You too, even if you want to flirt, look at the occasion. Resuscitation has just been issued to the two senior brothers. They need to rest. At this time even Kai Xia's cheeks were red. I didn't do that with him. Seeing that this topic could no longer be returned, Ouyang Shang, who had just resuscitation, sighed. Ghost Weeping Forest? Very well, I'm ready to go. As his voice fell, the room was dead silent. The disciples of Spirit Sword sect around the sickbed were dumbfounded. Thousands of words were stuck in their throats. As the big brother, Ouyang Shang had always been conscientious and took good care of his junior brothers and sisters. However, at present he was still seriously injured, yet he was in a hurry to save people. This was Tooch. Senior brother, don't joke with me. Your primordial spirit has been away from your body for too long and has just returned. It will take at least 3 to 5 days of rest to recover. How could you risk your life in Ghost Weeping Forest? That's right, senior brother, if you're not assured, we can send a few more people to help. In any case, the Blessed Fountain Base has been initially operated, so we don't need to leave so many people to guard it. Ouyang Shang shook his head. It's not that simple, I'm afraid I have to come forward. However, as soon as he finished speaking, someone patted his shoulder. Turning his head, he saw Wang Lu seriously shaking his head. Ouyang Shang was startled. He didn't expect that his opinion would be the opposite of Wang Lu's. After thinking for a moment, he waved his hand to signal his junior brothers and sisters to leave. Yang Fei and the others were also stunned. However, after many years of listening to their big brother, they didn't continue to pester him. Instead, they quietly left, leaving only the two people who had just recovered from a serious illness in the room. Ouyang Shang was silent for a long time and then asked, Do you think junior brother Donghua's matter is related to that thing? The so-called that thing naturally referred to the tragedy in Wang Lu's history, which led to the almost complete annihilation of the Lingjian school. Wang Lu said, After traveling through time, I have been involved in so many things that the history has long been interfered with beyond recognition. Therefore, I have no way to determine whether there is any connection or not. However, you should also feel that this matter is probably not simply a certain junior brother courting death and falling into danger. Ouyang Shang said, It's indeed a bit of a coincidence. It just happens to be stuck at this time, as if deliberately not letting us go back to the mountain. For Ouyang Shang, after dealing with the desert demons, the most important thing was to return to the mountain and report the matter of the demon race to the elders. He didn't say it before because the truth was still completely hidden in the fog, and rash action might be counterproductive. However, now that the enemy was clear, there was no need to worry about any unknown threat. The enemy was the demon race, and it was different from those peace-loving demons in the desert oasis who had been nearly completely domesticated by Fenrir. The last demon king was tyrannical, ambitious, and ruthless. If left unchecked, it would be a great threat to the entire 9 regions. Such a powerful opponent had far exceeded the limit of the Golden Generation. This was a powerful enemy that must be dealt with by the elders of the Lingjian school and the entire Wanxian League. By now, the unknown threat had been clearly explored, so there was no need to let the elders retreat because of the past events. Moreover, there was enough evidence in the desert oasis, so there was no need to expose the identity of Wang Lu as a time traveler to win people's trust. Thus, this was the best time to seek help from the elders of Spirit Sword sect. Unfortunately, in the Savage Land, general communication spells were completely ineffective. Sending a letter through the altar was already the limit, and this was only limited to the inside of the Savage Land. It was almost impossible to send a message to the outside. Therefore, if he wanted to report the situation to the sect, someone must personally deliver the letter. Then, just as he was about to resuscitation, he heard the news that his junior brother was missing in the Ghost Weeping Forest. The Ghost Weeping Forest was not far from the desert, so he really couldn't help but think of that. Ouyang Shang said, "It stands to reason that he should have no chance to turn things around in a short time." Wang Lu said, "Perhaps he himself doesn't have it, but he still has his men, and the desert tribe may not be his only chess piece." Fenrir only said that there are no 2 powerful creatures in the Savage Land, but by her standard, I'm afraid that even the elders of our Heavenly Sword Hall are not that powerful. And that Demon King has been operating in the Savage Land for some time before being suppressed by Fenrir. Ouyang Shang nodded. So, this matter may indeed be done by the demon race. Junior brother Wang Donghua is a hostage in their hands, and what they want is, Wang Lu said, what they want is for you to go and save him immediately so that you can avoid going back to the sect to report the situation, which would expose their existence too quickly. At the same time, if it goes well, they can also catch a more important hostage. Therefore, the rational choice is to ignore the threat of the other party and do what you should do. Ouyang Shang said, "Are you saying that I should abandon my junior brother? I'm asking you to make a more rational choice. Read it as rational, write it as cold-blooded. Diske, I didn't expect you to be so idealistic. Let's put it this way, everything we discussed just now is based on vague speculations. Perhaps junior brother Wang Donghua just accidentally lost his way, or perhaps junior brother Lucien has already found him and is scolding him for being undisciplined while writing a letter to Blessed Fountain to report that he is safe, and you and I are just having a false alarm." Ouyang Shang said, or perhaps junior brother Wang Donghua has fallen into the control of the demon race, and his life is at stake. Even the whole line led by junior brother Lucien is exposed to the risk. At this time, as long as we make a slight mistake, as long as there is a slight mistake, the number of people exposed to the risk will only increase. Wang Lu said. Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu looked at each other for a long time, and neither of them gave way. At this time, the door of the ward was violently pushed open, and Yang Fei, who had a relaxed face just now, walked in with a gloomy face. In his hand was a letter with an image technique. The letter was personally written by Lucien, and the spell was also arranged by him. The image on the letter was very simple and crude. A bloody arm was lying quietly on a piece of white rock, and the wound of the arm was still slowly flowing with blood. Yang Fei said with difficulty. Lucien said that it was Wang Donghua's hand. Obviously, it was done by someone because he was holding a letter in his hand, and the letter was written with the blood of junior brother Donghua. As he spoke, Yang Fei flipped the letter to the next page. The image changed and a square but rather jerky human word appeared. Come. Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu both sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Things had come to this point, and the original vague speculation had undoubtedly been confirmed. It was indeed done by the demon race, and the other party had issued a naked threat. Big brother, what should we do now? Yang Fei eagerly asked. Ouyang Shang got up from the bed. Gather the team, we'll set off. Then he looked back at Wang Lu. Wang Lu took a deep breath. At this moment he had to think hard, weighing all the gains and losses that might happen next. Ouyang Shang's attitude was so firm. Even though he knew it was a dead end, he still wanted to move forward bravely. Then, should he follow him and risk his life to save people? Or should he just abandon him? Abandon this unprecedented rare genius since the establishment of the Lingjian school? As a professional adventurer, Wang Lu was very clear about the importance of making a decision. It was just that, when it came to making a decision, it was not as easy as he thought. And at this time, another person opened his mouth. "Senior brother, I'll go with you." While speaking, Wang Lu incredulously looked at Wang Wu, who was walking in from outside the ward. "Hey, where is that pure girl who blushes when talking to people? Do you have a plan? Why did you suddenly become so active?" Master, isn't your estrus period a bit too irregular?" Chapter 517. Wang Lu could actually understand Ouyang Shang's decision very well. After all, they were essentially the same kind of people. Whether it was the chief disciple or the eldest senior brother, while this title shone brightly, it was also bound to bear great pressure. After all, the rights and obligations had to be equal. When the junior brothers and sisters encountered danger and difficulties, as the eldest senior brother, he had to step forward bravely, even if it was not the best choice. For the impeccable tacit understanding and trust between the golden generation, for the illusory human heart, or perhaps for the persistence in the bottom of his heart. In short, not only Ouyang Shang, the way people acted was often like this. The best solution was placed in front of them, but they had no choice. This was the principle of people having no choice in Jianghu. Of course, Ouyang Shang was not simply seeking his own death. His assurance Wang Lu could also understand a little. First of all, the opponent used the hostage tactic to threaten his side. This was a conspiracy rather than an overt plot. The use of a conspiracy meant that the opponent's strength was not overwhelming. Otherwise, he could directly make a move and crush everyone present in an instant. Why would he need to go through so much trouble? After all, the golden generation had just begun to grow up. For those old seniors in the immortal cultivation world, they were nothing more than a slightly higher level of ants. If a supreme of the unity stage was here, perhaps he could kill the golden generation with a single thought. There was no need to go through so much trouble to use a broken arm as a deterrent. The opponent's strength was not enough, so he had to supplement it with a conspiracy. Then, if he could grasp this point and gather the strongest strength to attack head-on, it was possible to settle the situation in one fell swoop before the opponent's conspiracy had time to unfold. This was Ouyang Shang's train of thought. While he seemed to impulsively shoulder the heavy burden of the eldest senior brother, he actually made quite rational thinking and judgment. But in the final analysis, this was still a kind of risk, and in Wang Lu's view the benefits could not offset the risks, so he would rather make the opposite decision, but unfortunately, "Alright, I'll go with you too." Ouyang Shang was slightly stunned. It was naturally best to have Wang Lu as a helper. He had a deep understanding of the strength of this transmigrator junior brother, but why? It was precisely because of the deep tacit understanding between them that they could understand each other's persistence. Therefore, Ouyang Shang understood that when Wang Lu's opinion was different from his just now, there was basically no possibility of turning back. Parting ways was already the best result, but now he actually changed his mind so cleanly? Was it because of Wang Wu? Ouyang Shang glanced sideways but soon gave up thinking about it, because now was not the time to think about these issues. Wang Lu also said, "I suggest that we send 2 junior brothers back to the mountain to report the matter of the demon race to the elders. This is a major event in 9 regions which cannot be delayed. Senior brother, what do you think?" Ouyang Shang's eyes narrowed. Send 2 junior brothers back to the mountain? Originally, I planned to go there myself, but considering that speed is not my forte, the ghost weeping forest needs my strength more. Wang Lu's explanation was reasonable, but Ouyang Shang knew very well that this was not what he really meant. The opponent used a bloody method to threaten them. In addition to telling them to go to the ghost weeping forest and walk right into the trap, it was also a warning not to tell anyone about the demon race. Wang Lu's suggestion was undoubtedly a provocation to his opponent. This would put people on both sides at risk. Those who returned to the mountain to report might be ambushed, and at the same time, the hostages in the ghost weeping forest might also lose their lives. Of course, from another point of view, this was also a risk that must be borne. The matter of delivering the letter was indeed very important. The more the other side tried to deter them, the more it proved this point. At the same time, it also showed that the other side did not have the means to block the way of delivering the letter. Of course, delivering the letter would be extremely risky, but if one was overcautious, then they would not be able to do anything. But, very well, junior brother Lu Li. As soon as Ouyang Shang named a person, Wang Lu interrupted. Junior brother Lu Li is versatile. It's too wasteful to just use him to deliver the letter. The terrain of the ghost weeping forest is complex, which is more suitable for him to play. I suggest that he be included in the rescue team. Ouyang Shang pondered for a moment and then acquiesced to this suggestion. The two young cultivators who were picked by Ouyang Shang were overjoyed and deeply felt that they had gained his trust. However, Ouyang Shang waved his hand, indicating that they should set off as soon as possible without saying anything more. This was because he really could not look directly at the passionate gazes of his two junior brothers. After the two junior brothers left, Ouyang Shang was silent for a moment, and then sent a riddle to Wang Lu using his primordial spirit. Junior brother Wang Lu, are you so pessimistic about the matter of delivering the letter? Wang Lu said, I just don't want a useful person to inexplicably bear too much risk. In my timeline, Lu Li will become an amazing cultivator. Those who can survive the cataclysm should not die so early. Oh, your excuse is really ordinary. In your timeline, I'm also a dead person, so why do you need to waste time on me? Alright, then I'll tell you the truth. I have a good relationship with Lu Li, and as for the other two, I won't feel so bad even if they die. Well said. Ouyang Shang sighed. He wanted to say something but didn't know what to say. Wang Lu said coldly, the taste of sacrifice is not good, but sometimes sacrifice is unavoidable. What we can do is to reduce the scope of sacrifice as much as possible, instead of wasting time and leading to greater sacrifice. I know that as the eldest senior brother, there are some things that you have to do, but I actually have a way to help you get out of your current predicament. I'd like to hear the details. It's very simple. Tell Lucien and the others about our current encounter and risk, and let them decide whether to continue to ask for help or to sacrifice themselves. Wang Lu said, if they are really the golden generation of Lingjian school, they should make a rational choice. They might even threaten us with their own lives so that we don't go. At that time you won't have any burden to speak of. Of course, I know that this kind of thing is basically subjective guidance and self-deception. You can't do it, so it's the same if I do it. Don't be so angry, it's the same for me to sacrifice myself. In that team, I have a good relationship with Lucien. You still can't agree? Wang Lu sneered, as expected as the eldest senior brother, you are good in everything except for being soft-hearted, which is a fatal flaw. Then what are you going to do? Ouyang Shang asked lightly. Wang Lu sighed, what else can I do? Didn't I say just now, count me in for the rescue? Ouyang Shang finally couldn't help laughing, it seems that we are about the same. You are indeed the future chief disciple of Lingjian school, you have also inherited the common problem of the school. Wang Lu sighed while looking up at the sky. To say that he was soft-hearted, actually it was not necessarily true. It was just that he suddenly thought of something just now. In the real history line, this Ouyang Shang still had an irreplaceable position in the hearts of the elders of Lingjian school even after his death for 150 years. Because this was the foundation of Lingjian school. If he could really sacrifice anyone for his own reason and interests, then, what was the difference between him and Xianghua, whom he had always disliked? At the same time, in the distant periphery of the Ghost Weeping Forest, the Spirit Sword team headed by Lucien was cautiously marching in the mountain forest, searching for the trace of the missing Wang Donghua. Senior brother, I'll have to trouble you to do it again. I've lost him again. Lost him again? Shen Yuan, what's wrong with you? At the end of the team, Lucien, holding 2 copper coins in his hand, somewhat angrily questioned the junior brother who was responsible for tracking them. Shen Yuan also felt wronged. I don't know. The spiritual energy in this Ghost Weeping Forest is scattered, so it's very difficult to track. Moreover, that person seems to be blocking my tracking at any time. Every once in a while, junior brother Donghua's clue will be completely messed up, and it's impossible to distinguish. Lucien pondered for a moment and then clenched his teeth. Very well, I'll do another divination. This time you must follow me closely. The more times I perform divination in a short period of time, the less effective it will be. Not to mention, I'm still a beginner in divination. Junior brother Mingxian, you also help me. If you notice that someone is deliberately disrupting the tracking, you can track them in reverse. Yes. The 2 junior brothers responded in unison. Then Lucien took a deep breath. His jade mansion and void core bloomed with light. With this light he threw the copper coins high. The copper coins continued to spin in midair and then fell into his palm. Lucien said in a deep voice. His voice was hoarse and unpleasant to hear. Shen Yuan nodded, bit his fingertip, and then dropped a drop of blood to summon his spirit beast, a half-hidden blood mist. The fog monster was a very rare monster. Its strengths and weaknesses were extremely prominent. Its frontal combat ability was very poor, but its nature was bloodthirsty. Its sensitivity to blood was far beyond other creatures. By chance, Shen Yuan managed to capture a young fog monster. With the help of his sect's elders, he subdued it as his spirit beast. At this time, it just happened to be used to track Wang Donghua's whereabouts. The person who did it left behind a broken arm. Shen Yuan collected a porcelain bottle of blood from the wound. After the fog monster appeared, he dropped a drop of black blood from the porcelain bottle into the body of the fog monster. The blood mist suddenly swelled and twisted as if it was in a carnival. The fog monster was a kind of creature with a special diet. Compared to the fresh blood full of vitality, it preferred the cold blood that contained the resentment of the dead. Compared to the blood that Shen Yuan used to summon it, the dirty blood from the broken arm was more suitable to its appetite. Unfortunately, there was only one mouthful of delicious food. After swallowing that drop of dirty blood, Shen Yuan no longer fed it blood. The hunger and thirst of the fog monster was unbearable. Driven by its instinct, it began to look for the same smell. Several times before, the fog monster found clues in the forest. Shen Yuan and the others tracked along the way and indeed found some clues, such as Wang Donghua's blood, as well as the residual aura of his magical treasure. However, every time they tracked halfway, they would be blocked by an inexplicable force, which made it difficult for them to continue. For this new tracking, Shen Yuan didn't have much hope. The tracking effect of the fog monster was gradually decreasing. At present, he had used the fog monster to track him many times. The hunger and thirst of the fog monster had obviously declined a lot, and its ability to sense things had become more and more sluggish. Without the help of senior brother Lucien's divination, it would only wander around randomly. Of course, that was because the opponent was cunning and had left traces of Wang Donghua everywhere in the Ghost Weeping Forest. The instinct of the fog monster alone was not enough to eliminate the interference. However, this time, the situation was beyond his expectation. Just as Wang Donghua's dirty blood dripped, the fog monster issued a sharp howl and then rushed to a certain direction in the east without Shen Yuan's reminder. At the same time, it also caught Shen Yuan off guard. When he wasn't paying attention, it ran away. What the hell? Shen Yuan was shocked. He didn't have the time to greet his senior brothers. Lifting the flying sword under his feet, he followed the fog monster and flew to the east. That fog monster was his lifeblood, so he couldn't afford to make even the slightest mistake. After following the fog monster to the east for an unknown period of time, Shen Yuan suddenly found that the surrounding forest seemed to be particularly dense with branches and leaves, which blocked the light. The surrounding yin energy was so dense that it made his whole body cold. As an elite disciple, Shen Yuan immediately became vigilant. He began to operate his Shudan at a high speed while looking back. He saw that senior brother Lucien and the others were not too far behind him. Their flying swords were not as fast as his, so they could only barely keep up. However, seeing that they didn't lose track of them, he finally felt a bit relieved. Then, just as he was thinking, a strong warning came from his heart. Not far in front of him, the figure of a one-armed man stood there quietly. His face was pale and covered in blood, but his appearance was vaguely discernible. Junior brother Donghua, is that you? Chapter 518. Seeing Wang Donghua at this time, Shen Yuan was delighted at first, but then he was shocked. More than a day ago, when Wang Donghua's arm was found in the vicinity of the Ghost Weeping Forest, Lucien organized everyone to have a discussion. At that time, most of them speculated that Wang Donghua might have encountered an accident. He was the genius cultivator with the best life-saving ability in the team. The golden nucleus puppet could almost guarantee him to escape from any unfavorable situation. So, conversely, if the golden nucleus puppet was not effective. Before the search and rescue began, everyone was already mentally prepared that they would likely only find the body of their junior brother Donghua. Moreover, even if they found him alive, they would have to face a powerful opponent with unknown strength. Whether they could save him from the hands of the other party was completely unknown. Therefore, they were particularly eager for the arrival of their big brother. Right now, their search and tracking work was nothing more than continuing the clues. They didn't expect to find junior brother Donghua, but now, Wang Donghua was clearly standing in front of them. Was this really junior brother Donghua? For a moment, Shen Yuan became vigilant. However, the next moment, the vigilance in his heart relaxed by 80% because he once again heard the familiar tone of Wang Donghua. Oh, I finally see my relative. His voice and tone were exactly the same as the familiar junior brother Wang Donghua. Shen Yuan was pleasantly surprised and quickly asked, "Are you okay?" Wang Donghua shrugged his shoulders and said with a bitter face, "Senior brother, do you think I look okay?" My right hand is gone. One wife and one concubine, only one concubine is left. Do you think I will be okay? Shen Yuan simply didn't know whether to be angry or to laugh. You slut, even after experiencing this kind of thing, you still can't change your bad habit. By the way, who did this to you? How did you escape? Upon hearing this, Wang Donghua's complexion slightly changed. You mean, the person who did this to me? Yes, where is he? How is his strength? To be able to escape without anyone noticing, his strength should not be too strong, right? In short, you can rest assured that Big Brother and the others will come back soon. At that time they will definitely avenge you. Big Brother is coming? Wang Donghua revealed a pleasantly surprised look. That's great. In that case I have nothing to worry about. As he spoke, his body went limp and was about to fall. Shen Yuan hurriedly went forward to support him. However, just as the two of them were about to touch, Shen Yuan's intuition warned him again, warning him that there was great danger ahead. Danger? What danger could it be? Unfortunately, before he could react, an ice-cold sensation pierced through him and quickly spread to every corner of his body. Shen Yuan incredulously looked at his junior brother Wang Donghua in front of him, looking at his cold smile as well as the even colder dagger on his chest. Junior brother Donghua, you are not junior brother Donghua? Shen Yuan finally realized what he had encountered. He quickly turned his head, wanting to warn the people behind him. The dagger in his chest had pierced through his jade mansion, so he could no longer use his sound transmission spell. But as soon as he opened his mouth, he felt the strength in his body disappear at an alarming rate. His entire body seemed to be melting and he couldn't even speak a single word. A moment later, his consciousness completely sank into darkness. Strange, where is junior brother Yuan? The first person to arrive was Xie Mingxian, the tracker in the team, second only to Shen Yuan. He had been following behind Shen Yuan the whole way and secretly protected him with spells. Once there was an external force that interfered with Shen Yuan's tracking, he would immediately counterattack. Therefore, it could be said that Xie Mingxian was the one who followed Shen Yuan's whereabouts the most closely. However, at this time, he was surprised to find that in just a blink of an eye, Shen Yuan had disappeared. Although this ghost-weeping forest was strange everywhere, it shouldn't make a shoot-on stage cultivator disappear just like that, right? Xie Mingxian, who was full of confusion, was about to go deeper into the forest to explore when he heard Lu Xian's stern voice behind him. Don't go. But, junior brother Shen, Xie Mingxian said as he continued to walk forward. Boom. The next moment, a sharp metallic sword chi fell in front of him and exploded into dust. The aftermath of the sword chi was also very painful. Xie Mingxian was taken aback. Senior brother, I am saving you. Do you want to be like junior brother Yuan, disappearing inexplicably? Lu Xian said and then shook his head with great resentment. It's my fault, I shouldn't have let him chase me so closely. I only thought that Big Brother would arrive soon, and when he comes all the problems can be solved, but I forgot that Big Brother repeatedly told me that the closer I am to success, the more I can't relax my vigilance. Hearing this, Xie Mingxian's heart sank more and more. Senior brother, you mean junior brother Shen Yuan? He has... Yes, and this time it's right in front of us, Lu Xian said. His eyes were already bloodshot as if they were on fire. How could it be? My spell has always been by junior brother Yuan's side. If something really happened to him, in the end, Xie Mingxian could no longer go on. There were no fools in the golden generation who deceived themselves. The truth of the matter was actually simple and clear. His spell did not work and Shen Yuan was taken away under his eyes. The so-called taken away was just wishful thinking. Just like junior brother Wang Donghua, he could only pray that they were still alive, still living as hostages under the control of the unknown enemy. If I catch him, your father will definitely tear him into pieces. Xie Mingxian clenched his teeth, and blood continued to flow from the corner of his mouth. His relationship with Shen Yuan was usually the best. The two of them had similar cultivation methods and could cooperate with each other. When they were cultivating on the mountain, they were inseparable, as close as brothers. But today, right in front of his eyes, Lu Xian was also indignant, but as the leader he must control his feelings. Mingxian, come back. Let's wait for Big Brother to arrive. Believe in Big Brother, he will certainly avenge the two junior brothers. Ouyang Shang arrived at the ghost weeping forest a day later. There were not many people accompanying him, only two people, Wang Wu and Wang Lu. For this kind of high-risk job, there was no need to bring too many people. Even the arrival of Wang Wu had caused a lot of criticism. Big Brother, it's not that I don't believe in your judgment, but In this situation, isn't it too risky to let junior sister Wang Wu participate? Previously, after experiencing junior brother Xin Yuan's accident, I really don't have the confidence to protect her. Regarding Lu Xian's doubt, Ouyang Shang only said, "It doesn't matter, junior sister Wang Wu will take care of herself. Moreover, she has the strongest bodyguard by her side, so there's no need to worry about her." While speaking, Wang Lu smiled and waved to Lu Xian and the others. "Hello, everyone, I am the strongest bodyguard." Regarding Wang Lu's life experience, Ouyang Shang still used the old saying. He was the product of the old sect leader's enjoyment of life. Considering that Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang's performance in too many aspects was extremely consistent, Lu Xian and the others accepted the reality after a short period of surprise. What's more, Wang Lu's life experience was not important. What was important was his strength. The next step was how to carry out the next step under the leadership of Ouyang Shang. Xie Mingxian, who was eager for revenge, suggested that Big Brother immediately lead the team to go deep into the Ghost Weeping Forest. But Ouyang Shang had other ideas. "The other party indicated that I should come, and now I'm here. It won't be long before the other party takes the initiative to take the next step. We might as well wait and see. Of course, during this time, we have to strengthen our vigilance, and must not leave any opportunities for the other party." Then he began to explain some things to pay attention to. When Ouyang Shang was thinking seriously, his thinking was far more meticulous than ordinary people. After arranging the instructions, Xie Mingxian, Lu Xian and the others gradually felt a trace of relief and confidence. And Wang Lu began to ask the others about the details of the incident that day. The so-called disappearing in the blink of an eye is obviously impossible. At that time, so many of you followed behind, even if one or two people turned their eyes away, not everyone turned their eyes away. Moreover, no matter how you look back afterward, you can't find any clues. The other party most likely used a concealment illusion. Have you investigated the scene according to this point? Xie Mingxian said, "Of course I have, but there are no traces of illusion left." "Is that so?" "That's probably because your investigation method is wrong. I'll go there myself later." Xie Mingxian's brows immediately wrinkled. At that time, the person in charge of the scene investigation was him, and at the same time, as the only cultivator in the team who was good at tracking and anti-tracking, the investigation was also his. And Xie Mingxian had full confidence in the conclusion of his investigation. If it was Big Brother Ouyang Shang questioning him, perhaps he would accept it humbly, but this inexplicable Wang Lu, who was he? As a result, less than an hour later, Xie Mingxian blushed with shame as he looked at the blood mist in Wang Lu's hand. That was Xin Yuan's spirit pet fog demon. It lingered in the place where its master disappeared. It was just that, when Xie Mingxian led the team to investigate the scene for a long time, they didn't find the existence of the fog demon at all. Of course, this was not because the fog demon had any innate magical ability to hide its trace, but because the illusion effect of the manipulator behind the scenes had always been there. Xie Mingxian was basically exploring the illusion in the illusion, so naturally he couldn't find any result. When it was Wang Lu's turn, he only used a grotesquely shaped red jade to illuminate the forest and spat out a strange syllable. Then, the fog monster appeared in front of everyone, and the air was filled with the stench of corpses and blood. It turned out that the illusion in the forest was finally broken. Everything that was previously concealed was also exposed. This is the unique illusion of the demon race. With the current level of 9 regions, it can't be directly broken. Xie Mingxian couldn't help but ask curiously, "Then how did you do it?" Of course there's an expert. As Wang Lu said that, he couldn't help but think of the various incredible methods that Elder Lu Li personally taught him on Spirit Sword Mountain not long ago. Among them was the method to break this illusion. Of course, the method taught by Elder Lu Li was very cumbersome, but now that he had the Demon Jade, he could take a shortcut. However, if Lu Li didn't point out the principle of illusion, even if he had the Demon Jade, he might not be able to find the right method. Next, let's listen to what the Fog Demon said. As a survivor who stayed in the same place, the Fog Demon was likely to witness the whole process of Xin Yuan's mysterious disappearance, which was an important clue. However, the Fog Demon lacked intelligence and had always been difficult to communicate with. As a spirit pet, it was more used as a tool. Even if it witnessed the whole process and memorized it mechanically, how to extract this memory was still a problem. What's the problem? Haven't you Golden Generation even been taught the soul-searching technique? As Wang Lu said that, his palm bloomed with green light, and a soul-searching technique was unceremoniously hit on the Fog Demon. The bloody fog burst out with an unprecedented scream, and for a moment, many people's faces suddenly changed. What the hell are you doing? That's the precious relic of junior brother Shen Yiwen. He loved this fog demon the most when he was alive, and you actually... Wang Lu lightly said, now that he's dead, do you still care what he liked when he was alive? Are you guys out of your mind? This is the most direct clue to avenge Shen Yiwen. Isn't it good to let this spirit pet die a worthy death? With that, he ignored the other people's eyes and directly used the soul-searching technique on a disc that was prepared by Ouyang Shang in advance. Chapter 519. The picture on the disc was blood red. As a kind of monster, the wisdom of the fog monster was very different from that of human beings, and its perception and understanding of the world were also very different. Wang Lu directly extracted its memory with the soul-searching technique, so it was naturally not easy to interpret. However, Wang Lu did not further modify it, but presented the original image to the audience. Most of the people present were somewhat confused, but as elites they could more or less interpret some of the content. From the point of view of the fog monster, it seems to indicate that it has been in a highly excited state, but there is no clear object in its field of vision. It's probably because its perception has been blinded by someone so it can't see anything. Lu Xian speculated in a soft voice. Wang Lu said, the opponent's illusion technique can deceive you, these elites, so of course, it can also deceive this brainless monster. Not to mention that the perception of the fog monster is mediocre, so it's normal for it to not see anything. But don't you think this blood-red background color is very strange? The fog monster is a bloodthirsty creature, but in the tracking mode, the fog monster is only interested in the blood of the target creature. Lu Xian immediately responded, in other words, this highly excited state is because the fog monster found the blood of junior brother Donghua? Moreover, the amount of blood is quite large. Wang Lu added, then combined with the next question. Shen Yiwen as a tracker has received very strict training in the sect, and his vigilance is extremely high. How could he suddenly be killed that he didn't even have the time to send out the alarm? Ouyang Shang said, it's probably because he relaxed his vigilance. After all, the training of the sect is limited, and a lot of on-the-spot reactions can't be done without accumulating enough experience. And to make a vigilant tracker relax his vigilance, I think it's very easy to infer what kind of situation junior brother Shen Yiwen encountered. Lu Xian incredulously said, do you think he saw Wang Donghua? To be precise, I'm afraid it's Wang Donghua's body. The blood of a living person is far less attractive to the fog demon than the blood of a dead person. To make the fog demon so excited, I'm afraid it would take a whole corpse. Ouyang Shang went on to say, the opponent is likely to use the puppet technique to control the body, or the body possession technique to seize the body. In short, junior brother Yiwen thought that he saw the living Wang Donghua, so he was deceived by his words and relaxed his vigilance. Then he suffered a sneak attack and was unfortunately killed. That's probably the truth. Of course, all of this is just our speculation. We can't rule out other possibilities, said Wang Lu. But in conclusion, I hope that everyone can learn from this lesson. Stay tense at all times and be alert to every little change around you. Otherwise, junior brother Shen Yiwen will serve as an example. These words were spoken harshly and even coldly, so there was no response, but Wang Lu did not care. He and Ouyang Shang came together, each with their own tasks. Ouyang Shang, who had a good relationship with her junior brothers and sisters, was in charge of being a caring sister, while he was in charge of saying those things that no one wanted to hear but had to be said. It was necessary to summarize the experience in lessons, but no one wanted to continue to listen to such a bloody summary. Then what are we going to do next? Lu Xian changed the topic. Withdraw. Wang Lu gave the answer without hesitation. Everyone immediately withdraw to the sect, and then hand over the matter here to the elders to deal with? What kind of method is this? Lu Xian found it hard to accept. Do you want us to put down junior brother Wang and junior brother Shen and just run away? Wang Lu coldly said, I want you to at least keep your own lives. Previously, Wang Donghua's life and death were unknown, and he was taken as a hostage. You insisted on saving him, and then junior brother Shen Yiwen lost his life. Now, relying on junior brother Shen's sacrifice, we have finally figured out the basic situation. Do you want junior brother Shen's sacrifice to be in vain? If we leave now, junior brother Shen's sacrifice will be in vain. Lu Xian excitedly argued, besides, how do you know that junior brother Wang and junior brother Shen are dead? Perhaps. Wang Lu sneered and said, perhaps they're still alive? Perhaps they're just locked up, waiting for us to rescue them one day? Why don't you assume that they might burst out with their potential at the critical moment and instantly soar to immortality? Be rational. In any case, you're also one of the key training targets of the management trainee program. As the leader of a branch, if you don't even have the ability to face reality. Enough, I know what you want to say. You're just trying to find an excuse to escape, you coward of unknown origin. Lu Xian angrily interrupted, I don't want to listen to your nonsense anymore. Big brother, what do you say? However, when Lu Xian looked at his big brother with hope, what he got was a complicated look. Lu Xian looked at him in surprise. In a trance, he felt that his big brother's face seemed to have become strange. Big brother, you won't support him, right? Junior brother Yuan is still waiting for us to save him. Junior brother Donghua may not be dead yet. He has the golden nucleus puppet, which is equivalent to having multiple lives. Even if a Taoist master of Yuanying stage wants to kill him, it would not be easy. Perhaps what the fog monster smelled was only the bloody smell of the golden nucleus puppet. You can't so rashly conclude that they're dead. Lu Xian argued with reason, but in exchange Ouyang Shang remained silent for a long time. Big brother, However, speaking to this point, Lu Xian finally couldn't go on. He turned his eyes to the others. He saw that although everyone had a difficult look, they still stood on the side of Ouyang Shang. This was the prestige of the big brother of the golden generation. As long as it was his decision, no matter how difficult it was, they could only accept it. That's right, this was the judgment of the big brother. Perhaps I'm really wrong. Lu Xian secretly thought. If when he saw that arm he could still have fantasies about Wang Donghua's survival, then when Xin Yuan was also killed, to guess that they were still alive, perhaps it was really just wishful thinking. Perhaps in fact I just can't accept that as a team leader, I can only watch helplessly as my two junior brothers met with a vicious attack. This kind of mentality is wasting time on an insignificant problem, and I'm afraid I'm not far from becoming a devil. Fortunately, big brother woke me up in time, it's just, the taste of waking up is really not good. After a long silence, Lu Xian finally raised his head and said, let's go. His voice was hoarse and low but with a bit of decisiveness. On the same day the team began to evacuate from the Ghost Weeping Forest. It took time for the team to evacuate. Although it only took Ouyang Shang, Wang Lu and Wang Wu more than a day to travel from Blessed Fountain, they were traveling light, plus they had sufficient supplies in Blessed Fountain. With the addition of Lu Xian and the others, it would take at least 3 days to return to Blessed Fountain from the Ghost Weeping Forest. The evacuation was arranged in an orderly manner, neither too fast nor too slow. Because everyone knew that right beside them, there was a mysterious and powerful enemy that was eyeing them covetously. 2 of their junior brothers had already met with misfortune because of it. If they were even a little bit careless, perhaps they would become the third person. On the first day the team marched at a slow pace. Not far from the Ghost Weeping Forest, they began to set up camp. The cultivators of Spirit Sword sect performed their respective duties. Some used their sword chi to cut down the weeds, flatten the ground to provide space, and some set up magical tools around the camp to guard. Some were responsible for refining simple medicinal pills, which were used as ingredients for the medicinal diet. As for the others who were not assigned a task, they each found a good position, meditated and maintained their strength. In the past, the work of setting up camp was never lacking in joy. In particular, in this team there was a genius chef of the golden generation, Li Shi. His medicinal diet was self-taught and superb. Not to mention cultivators of the same stage, even some Yuanying stage elders flocked to him like ducks. Not only the taste was wonderful, but it was also matched with a variety of ingredients, and it also had various benefits such as strengthening the foundation. Every time they were accompanied by Li Shi, the food after setting up camp was always very worth looking forward to. However, today everyone's mood was very low. Thinking of the 2 brothers who were completely lost in the Ghost Weeping Forest, and then thinking of how they abandoned them. The heaviness in their heart made it difficult for them to swallow the delicious food. In this simple camp, only the short and fat chef Li Shi could still be optimistic. Big brother, senior brother Wang, this is the freshly made meat soup. I'll let you taste the first 2 bowls first. Li Shi cheerfully scooped out 2 bowls of fragrant meat soup from a small cauldron and handed them to Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu. Oh, the taste of this meat soup seems to be more delicious than before. Ouyang Shang took the soup bowl. Before the meat soup entered his mouth, the strong fragrance had already aroused his interest. Li Shi said with a simple and honest smile, isn't that so? Just now I was lucky enough to catch a pearl deer in the forest. Before I only saw it in the book. According to the legend, its meat is delicious. Even if it is stewed in the cauldron, it would not lose its tenderness and it would melt in the mouth. Ouyang Shang shook his head in amusement. I didn't expect to have good food falling from the sky at this time. Next to him, Wang Lu also smiled and nodded to Li Shi. He picked up the soup bowl with his right hand and was about to put it into his mouth. However, the next moment he suddenly stretched out his left hand. His arm was as fast as a flying sword, and in an instant he firmly grasped Li Shi's neck. Then he raised his right hand and poured the whole bowl of meat soup into Li Shi's mouth. Almost in an instant, Li Shi's entire chin suddenly melted, like a candle being burned at a high temperature. Blood, flesh, and bones melted into a thick paste, dripping into his chest along with the meat soup that entered his mouth. It also came into contact with the magic robe that had its own defensive and poison-repellent effect, causing a pungent smell of smoke to rise. Hee, it melts in the mouth, it's really not a lie. Wang Lu sneered and threw away the porcelain bowl of soup, and then summoned the sword of Mount Kuan. Next to him, Ouyang Shang had already silently put the soup bowl on the ground. A thick and simple sword was held in his hand, and the sword intent was dense, enveloping Li Shi. This sudden change was unexpected to all the people present. However, as the person involved, Li Shi at this time, seemed unusually heavy. How do you guys know? A dull sound came from Li Shi's stomach. His chin and throat had completely melted, so he could not speak at all. Wang Lu sneered. Red blood poison, colorless and tasteless. It can melt blood and rot bones. Do you think only the demon race knows this poison? Not long ago, when he received the special training at the mountain gate, Elder Lu Li emphasized on the method to cure the red blood poison. Li Shi narrowed his eyes. The simple and honest eyes that belonged to the original owner were now cold and sharp. You guys have long planned this? Of course we have long planned this. We have long calculated that as long as we pretend to be disheartened and withdraw, you will definitely appear along the way. Because you dare not let us go back to the mountain to ask for help. This day we pretended to be in a difficult situation and finally we caught you, this big fish. What a joke, you've killed 2 disciples of Spirit Sword Sect. How could I allow you to continue to be free and unfettered in the dark? If I don't kill you, I will not be able to rest easy. Want to kill me? But that depends on whether you have. Die, you bastard. With that, Wang Lu's primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi directly exploded Li Shi's head. At the same time, an unusually shrill scream sounded in the distance. Chapter 520. Li Shi's funeral was very simple. There was a plain grave surrounded by green mountains and clear waters. It was a rare quiet place outside the ghost weeping forest, and it was his burial place. Li Shi's life-bonded magical treasure heavenly incense cauldron stood in front of the tombstone. Under the cauldron, there was a fire that never went out, and the boiling broth in the cauldron never dried up. The steam was dense, vaguely like the smiling face of the fatty. Next to Li Shi's grave, the cenotaphs of Wang Donghua and Xin Yiwen stood in order of seniority. Led by Ouyang Shang, the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect softly sang the farewell song, bidding farewell to their fellow Taoists who unfortunately had to leave on the path of immortality. Lingjian school never paid attention to formalities. Grief and anger were hidden in the bottom of their heart along with the song. After the song, Ouyang Shang led the team to set up a protective array to expel the wild animals and poisonous insects, ensuring the safety of this place. Then the group continued on their journey. Along the way, no one said a word about Li Shi's death because at this time, there was no need to complicate matters. Moreover, in the Golden Generation, there was no unreasonable person who couldn't distinguish right from wrong. Wang Lu used primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi to kill Li Shi, destroying his body and soul. His decisive and ruthless means made people shudder. He showed no mercy to his fellow sect members, which seemed to easily arouse criticism. However, at that critical moment, how could he be soft-hearted? Moreover, Li Shi threw the bone-corroding poison into the soup, but none of the elites present noticed it. Were it not for Wang Lu's special training, that pot of broth might have caused heavy casualties. At that time, Li Shi was no longer the well-known genius fat chef. Perhaps at that time he was just a walking corpse. If it was anyone else, the most correct approach was to let him rest in peace. Let alone Wang Lu's full-strength sword chi not only buried Li Shi, but also seriously injured the primordial spirit attached to it. The mournful wail in the distance startled tens of thousands of birds, which could be clearly heard even from far away. Wang Lu's primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi could be called immortal-level sword chi, and its power was not under that of brilliant sword heart. Unfortunately, limited by his own realm, it could not be done once and for all. Perhaps in a short period of time, it could guarantee a period of peace, but in the future no one could say for sure. There were still too many problems that needed to be solved. For example, when exactly was Li Shi controlled? The group of people always stayed together. Even when they set up camp, Li Shi would always be scanned by the divine senses of his senior and junior brothers when he ran to a slightly further place to catch prey. There was almost no gap between them. It wasn't that they didn't trust Li Shi, but that they were in a dangerous place and facing the threat of a powerful enemy. They had to take care of each other at all times to ensure their safety. However, it was a pity that there was still a problem with such a cautious method. Moreover, they were still unable to recover the truth until now. This could not help but cast a shadow over everyone's hearts. What should he do next? Even if they had the courage to give up everything and return to the sect, from Ghost Weeping Forest to Spirit Sword Mountain, it would take at least 6 or 7 days. It was hard to imagine that the Demon King would just sit back and watch, and during this period how many disciples of Spirit Sword Mountain would be harmed by him. Junior brother Wang Lu, what do you think? Along the way, Ouyang Shang secretly asked via voice transmission. He didn't disclose the content because he worried that Wang Lu actually already had the answer, but that answer might destroy other people's confidence. Wang Lu replied, unfortunately not yet. I'm not hiding anything. No matter how cruel the truth is, it's better than not knowing the truth. But I don't remember that the elders taught me that the demon race has this kind of puppet control method. According to you, the elders learned the lesson after a great sacrifice and refined all kinds of countermeasures, and it's impossible for them to master all the means of the demon race. Moreover, Wang Lu said with a wry smile, moreover, the historical line has undergone major changes, so it's natural for a new situation to appear. It's just that, in the fight against such an opponent, we may face a particularly cruel situation in the next period of time. Because it was impossible to judge the way the opponent controlled the puppet, there was no way to prevent it, and there was no way to predict it. Fatty Li Shi's matter would not be the last time, and the opponent would only become more cunning. This time the poisoning was seen through by Wang Lu. That was because the demon race's red blood poison, which should not be known by human beings, happened to be within the recognition range of Wang Lu. But what about the next time? Even Elder Lu Li never said that he could identify all the demon race's poisons, so of course, Wang Lu was even less sure. Moreover, poisoning was a small matter. As long as the opponent was not stupid, they could easily think of a more effective way, killing each other. He could control Li Shi to poison the cauldron, and after being seen through, he could also control other people. On the surface they would pretend to be normal and then suddenly attack. Even if they didn't succeed, it would damage the trust between the disciples of Spirit Sword sect. The Golden Generation was as close as brothers and sisters, and the decades of tacit understanding was indestructible. However, that was based on the mutual understanding. If the other party could not even be determined whether they were real people or not, tacit understanding and trust were all empty words. Moreover, there's a more fatal problem in this. Ouyang Shang bitterly sighed with emotion. Wang Lu nodded. When he controlled Li Shi, until I finally detected the red blood poison in the bowl, I didn't even see the slightest clue. Me too. Ouyang Shang said, the disguise is flawless, no different from the real person. Even the most subtle details are perfectly imitated. This can only show that he has completely mastered Li Shi's personality as well as his memory. Wang Lu said, you Golden Generation are as close as brothers and sisters. You've been honest with each other for decades, and there are almost no secrets between each other. Therefore, as long as he controls one person, it's tantamount to catching all the others. Ouyang Shang smiled bitterly. Speaking of which, when the sect's elders trained you, didn't they consider this problem? It's fine when your cultivation is still shallow, but when you have some achievements in the future, when each of you is in charge of a piece of land in Lingjian school. As long as one of you is used with the soul-searching technique, the whole sect is finished, right? Ouyang Shang did not answer but changed the topic. I wonder how the 2 junior brothers who returned to the mountain to report are doing now. On the bright side, since the opponent has been pestering the Ghost Weeping Forest during this time, other aspects should not have enough time to take care of, so they have a great chance of successfully returning to the mountain. But, Ouyang Shang said, but it's hard to imagine that the opponent would expose such a big flaw. Unfortunately, now we can only take one step at a time. By the way, I suddenly thought of something just now. Wang Lu said, shook his head and did not continue. I hope it's not that bad. Ouyang Shang glanced at him. With Wang Lu's temper, there was rarely anything that he did not finish. To make him so afraid. I'm afraid that it's not that easy to talk about it. And that matter, I can also guess, is indeed. I hope it's not that bad. In the future Lingjian school there was a Wang Wu's law which was, as long as there is a possibility that Wang Wu will lose her moral integrity, no matter how small the possibility is, she will definitely lose it for you to see. In the same way, as long as there is a possibility that things will go bad, no matter how reluctant you are, you have to face it. The thing that Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang were worried about happened one day later. Humph. Wang Wu's muffled snort broke the silence of the procession. The procession was flying quietly over a large river. The river was a famous dangerous place in the vicinity, but it was also a shortcut to return to Blessed Fountain. A few days ago, Ouyang Shang, Wang Lu, and Wang Wu crossed this river and quickly rushed to the Ghost Weeping Forest from the shortcut. As long as they were more than 100 feet away from the river surface and were quiet, they would not disturb the powerful monsters at the bottom of the river. This time, before the procession crossed the river, the procession was very careful. Halfway through the journey, a sudden change occurred. Ouyang Shang, who was the leader of the procession, immediately looked back and saw that Wang Lu had already arrived at Wang Wu's side. With the sword of Mount Kuan in his right hand, he propped up the non-phase sword defense to protect her, while the primal chaos sword Qi in his left hand lingered at his fingertips, ready to strike. With Wang Lu's temperament, he should not have been ready to strike. Once he confirmed the enemy's attack, the sword Qi would erupt without mercy. However, at this time he had to endure it. Because the person who launched a sneak attack on Wang Wu was Lu Xian. Even Wang Lu did not expect this. He suspected everyone in the procession, but he did not spend too much time on Lu Xian. Because he was a survivor of that year's incident, and also the training elder of the Lingjian school in the real history line, his strength was unfathomable. Although it was Lu Xian 150 years ago, Wang Lu inevitably had a preconceived idea. Only God knew how the opponent seized this flaw, controlled Lu Xian, and launched a swift and fierce sword attack on Wang Wu. If not for Wang Lu putting Wang Wu as a key target to guard, this sword attack could have killed her. The current 10 people of Heavenly Sword Hall are all unbearable in the Golden Generation? Uncle, you're too modest. With this sword attack of yours, even if it's not the best in the Golden Generation, it's certainly above average. Wang Lu looked at Lu Xian in front of him with a somewhat complicated expression. I really didn't expect it to be you. If you want to blame someone, blame that damn history line. Thinking of this, Wang Lu's primal chaos sword Qi no longer hesitated and was about to break out of his body. However, at this time, Lu Xian suddenly looked startled and his face revealed a blank look. What's wrong with me? Wang Lu's sword Qi suddenly froze. Lu Xian? Lu Xian shook his head hard. Just now. I seemed to be in a trance. What happened? Then he saw Wang Lu's non-phase sword defense, as well as the silent Wang Wu next to Wang Lu, who was silently treating the wound on her arm. Although Lu Xian was not amazing, he was not a fool. He immediately realized what had happened. Did I do it? I was just possessed by the enemy and attacked junior sister Wang Wu? The people around him gathered around and looked at Lu Xian with complicated eyes. Some were suspicious, some were sympathetic, and so on. Wang Lu inwardly sighed with emotion. The opponent really thought of this trick. Possess and then set him free, leaving behind a mess. Let's see how they solve it. In the face of a fellow disciple who had a criminal record, the trust relationship of the Golden Generation. Could it still be maintained? Could everyone trust Lu Xian unreservedly? Who could guarantee that his current innocent posture was not a disguise? After all, after the possession, the opponent could perfectly reproduce the original owner's every move. And if he mercilessly killed and executed Lu Xian without hesitation, the people present, could they really calmly face that pair of blank and innocent eyes? Wouldn't they worry about the devil haunting them in the middle of the night? This was simply the most brilliant psychological attack. Senior brother? Wang Lu. Lu Xian's voice trembled slightly. I'm sorry. Then he raised the sword in his hand. The blade was still stained with the blood of Wang Wu's arm, but at this time, it was aimed at his own throat. Obviously, Lu Xian had already figured out this problem. He had now become a burden in the team. Therefore, he also took out the courage that a member of the Golden Generation should have, ready to sacrifice himself for a noble cause. But the next moment, Wang Lu made his move. The primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi shot out from his fingertips. Chapter 521. In terms of decisiveness, few people could compare with Wang Lu. At the moment when Lu Xian was about to commit suicide, The primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi broke out of his body. However, contrary to the expectation of the surrounding people, the sword chi was not aimed at the sword in Lu Xian's hand, but at the river under his feet. With a loud bang, the river water rose to the sky. The sword chi raged and crushed many fish and shrimps in the river. At the bottom of the river, the angry roar of the resuscitation of the giant beast rolled over. At the head of the team, Ouyang Shang, who had a tacit understanding with Wang Lu, loudly roared, "Go!" This roar contained the true chi of the king pill, and the deterrent effect was no less than that of the Zen lion's roar. The sound wave spread in all directions, suppressing the roar of the giant beast at the bottom of the river and shaking the waves of the river. The cultivators of Spirit Sword sect on the river were also shaken, and their magical power involuntarily surged up. Their bodies seemed to be attracted by an external force as they followed Ouyang Shang forward. The next moment, the giant beast at the bottom of the river felt the provocation and completely broke out from its slumber. A dark blue icicle rose from the bottom of the river, and the huge vertebra enveloped everyone in its frozen range. At this critical moment, Wang Lu's non-phase sword and Ouyang Shang's void earth shield shot out at the same time, colliding with the icicle. After a dull bang, the two of them were pushed into the sky by the recoil force, but the freezing of the icicle was also delayed for a moment. The rest of the people did not dare to hesitate and tried their best to escape. Under the deterrence of the giant beast at the bottom of the river, at this moment, any entanglement and hesitation were swept away, and only the will to survive occupied everything. The next moment, behind the crowd, an icicle condensed and formed. The fish in the river and the birds in the sky were all frozen in the icicle, and their vitality was extinguished. Were it not for the slight deflection of the body of this icicle, the people of Lingjian School would not have been spared. The crisis was not over yet. The attack of the giant beast was blocked, but as the master of the river, the giant beast had countless underlings. At this time, they jumped out one after another and began to use their demon techniques to interfere with the action of the disciples of Spirit Sword sect. Some stirred up the river water to form whirlpools, some laid down thick fog that covered the sky, some used the demonic artifacts in their hands to attack from afar, and some simply jumped out of the water to intercept. Although these prawn soldiers and crab generals were only miscellaneous soldiers in the river, there was no lack of people with shocking strength. Among them, a few green crabs even had full inner cores that were overflowing with brilliance. They already possessed the strength of Golden Core Realm cultivators. At this time, Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu were still on guard against the giant beast itself, and had no time to spare to help. Although the others in the team were all elites of the same generation, it just so happened that there was no assaulter who could lead the team out of their predicament. There were about 100 people in the Golden Generation, and those who could be called assaulters were also very rare. "Everyone, follow me." At this crucial moment, Lu Xian let out a roar. His whole body was bathed in golden light, and an astonishing magical power fluctuation surged. You're burning your innate Yuan Qi?" Beside him, Xie Mingxian was surprised. "It hasn't been long since you reached the Shudan realm. Rashly using your innate vitality it's my atonement." Lu Xian roared furiously. The flying sword in his hand turned into a golden bridge that led straight ahead. Wherever the bridge went, the group of devils would scatter, and the few green crabs would also sway. They were forced to lose their footing. "Everyone keep up." Xie Mingxian no longer hesitated. He also ignited his innate vitality to help Lu Xian, making the golden bridge more solid. Immediately afterward, the rest of the people also followed, using their own strength to reinforce the bridge, and then moved forward along the golden bridge. No one could stop them. The group of people flew to the other side of the river at their fastest speed. During this period, no one had the leisure to be distracted by other things. Reinforcing the golden bridge so that the group of demons could not get close to it, the golden bridge that Lu Xian released by burning his innate vitality had a very strong evil repelling effect. After the joint effort of the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect, it became even more indestructible. Several green crab generals madly slapped the golden bridge with their giant claws. Each blow had the power to crack open a mountain, but they could not break the golden bridge. And the only monster that had the ability to break the golden bridge, for some reason, never made a move again. The river was wide, but eventually it had an end. After no one knew how long, the end of the golden bridge finally reached the riverbank. When they reached the shore, it was no longer the sphere of influence of the monsters of the river. The shrimp soldiers and crab generals unwillingly retreated. Then they shifted their attention to the two people who were still hovering above the river. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang never followed the Golden Bridge. It was not because they were confident, but because of the monster in the depths of the river. Only they could barely resist it, so they had to stay behind to cover the rear. Of course, in the face of such a monster, the two of them did not have the confidence to win. However, they had enough means to make the opponent afraid and not dare to rashly provoke an all-out war. Wang Lu put away his non-phase sword art and operated his primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi to the limit. His two hands were filled with sword chi, which continued to crush the space, as if tearing the yin and yang, stirring the primal chaos. Ouyang Shang also put the spiritual treasure level flying sword in front of his chest. The sword light was like a wave, and wherever it went, water vapor would rise as if a great drought had arrived. Ouyang Shang was naturally intimate with the earth, which was even better than his earth spirit root body. This should have been a characteristic that was good at defense. However, after he changed the way he used this ability, he turned into the natural enemy of the aquatic creatures, Drought Demon. Both of them gave up their defense and went all out to attack. If the big river monster really wanted to fight to the death, they might not be its opponent, but they could leave the opponent with a serious injury that could never be healed. This was not because of how solid their cultivation base was, but because of the supreme effect of the immortal level method, the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi. The immortal level method was the crystallization of the human cultivator's tireless pursuit of immortality for tens of thousands of years. It was also the fundamental reason why human cultivators ruled the world. Against such an opponent, not many monsters were willing to fight to the death. It was not easy for monsters to achieve immortality. For a strong monster like the Big River monster, it would mostly need to cultivate for thousands of years and pass through countless tribulations. However, human beings often had the same cultivation base within 100 years. Therefore, unless it was necessary, monsters were rarely willing to fight to the death with human beings. In the end, the giant beast at the bottom of the river did not choose to make a move and let the two people leave. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang hovered in the air for a while. Seeing that the situation was settled, they followed the team to cross the river and rested for a while on the shore. When they landed, the two of them swayed at the same time and spat out black blood. That was the price of resisting the icicle head-on. However, after spitting out the blood, their complexions were a lot ruddy. Obviously, they had completely suppressed their injuries. However, the focus of the team was not the two of them. Everyone was in a circle, and in the middle was Lu Xian, who was sitting cross-legged. Seeing the arrival of Ouyang Shang, everyone consciously separated for him. Ouyang Shang did not say much. In a few steps, he came to the back of Lu Xian, and then put his hand on the top of Lu Xian's head. Using the wisdom imbuement technique, he helped him smooth out the violent power of the void core in his jade mansion. He also used the pure immortal spirit energy in the king pill to make up for his innate vitality deficit. After a moment, Lu Xian's complexion slightly improved. After taking a deep breath, he stood up and then cupped his hands toward his senior brother. Ouyang Shang nodded and then looked at the others. "Everyone, do you understand?" Xie Mingxian and the others nodded one after another, and then gratefully looked at Wang Lu. In particular, Lu Xian bowed deeply, almost kneeling down to pay his respect. Just now, above the river, Lu Xian was unfortunately controlled by the demon race and attacked Wang Wu. After that, although he recovered his sanity, he faced a situation where his trust had collapsed. Was a person who had been controlled by the demon race still trustworthy? Or, how to prove that he was the real person and not the demon race in disguise? This was actually an unsolvable problem. Because of Li Shi's flawless disguise, any act to prove his innocence seemed powerless. Therefore, Wang Lu took the initiative to make a move, providing an opportunity. In short, it was a fight with his life. Trust was not purely rational. If you wanted to prove it rationally, you would only fall into a trap, and the simplest way was to use passion and emotion. When people saw with their own eyes that Xie Mingxian did not hesitate to risk the danger of perishing and resolutely burning his innate vitality to cast the Golden Bridge, even the greatest doubts would vanish like smoke in thin air. The Golden Generation originally had very deep emotional fetters, and to rebuild trust, they only needed an opportunity. Wang Lu provided an opportunity at the fastest speed, and Lu Xian did not disappoint and seized this opportunity. Now people had forgotten the past of Lu Xian being controlled by the Demon King and once again accepted him as a brother. Of course, if one really wanted to take it seriously, there were indeed many things that seemed far-fetched. For example, the purpose of Wang Lu's attack was too deliberate, and Lu Xian's behavior just now was probably just a demon's disguise, but what was the difference between that and not? Since the demon race could control Lu Xian without anyone knowing, they could also control anyone else. Blind suspicion was meaningless. As long as it was emotionally acceptable, that was enough. This move of the demon race was to destroy the trust of the Golden Generation, and the task of the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect was to protect this trust. And in this round of confrontation, it was obvious that Lingjian school won. At the same time, if the demon race did not have a new trick, the next round of confrontation would still be won by the disciples of Spirit Sword sect. After reorganizing the team, Ouyang Shang said, "The blessed fountain base is already very close. Everyone will have to work hard. Don't rest, go all out." One day later, everyone arrived at Blessed Fountain. In the Blessed Fountain base, more than half of the Golden Generation had gathered. Since Wang Donghua and Xin Yuan both died in Ghost Weeping Forest, Ouyang Shang sent a letter to Blessed Fountain from the temporary base outside Ghost Weeping Forest, asking them to find a way to contact everyone else and gather at Blessed Fountain as soon as possible. The opponent was elusive, unpredictable, and obviously aimed at the disciples of Spirit Sword sect. At this time, no matter how radical the training policy was, it was impossible to let the disciples of Spirit Sword sect act independently in the Savage Land. After arriving at Blessed Fountain base, Ouyang Shang immediately asked, "Is there a reply from the sect?" The two junior brothers who returned to the mountain to ask for help a few days ago should have the result, regardless of whether it was successful or not. Yang Fei, who came to greet them, had already expected that his big brother would ask this question, so his face raised a smile. "Master has already replied, the reinforcements will arrive in 3 days." His smile contained the confidence that victory was within his grasp. Chapter 522. A few days ago, when Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang sent their two junior brothers back to the mountain to ask for help, they actually didn't have much hope. If everything went well, of course that would be the best. The elders of Spirit Sword sect and the other sects of the Wanxian League would come to support them. At that time, no matter how powerful the demon race was, they would be annihilated. Previously, Wang Lu couldn't judge the opponent's card, so he didn't dare to rashly expand the scale of the war. But now that the black tide had been suppressed, he had no scruples. However, they really couldn't expect too much from the request for help, because it was not difficult for the opponent to judge the situation. As long as the demon race was not stupid, they must be able to see the importance of blocking the news. As long as this group of disciples of Spirit Sword sect was completely killed, it would be difficult for Spirit Sword sect to find out the abnormality for a while based on the isolation of the news in the Savage Land. And when they found out the problem, the demon race would have already completed the arrangement, and they would no longer be afraid of anyone. As long as Wang Lu was killed, the terrifying black tide in the desert would continue to accumulate until it erupted. When the black tide swept through, the Lingjian school would embark on the road of the real history. Therefore, from the beginning, sending people back to the mountain to ask for help was somewhat of a gamble. It was just that, under the situation at that time, this move couldn't be put aside. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Ouyang Shang chose two junior brothers who were proficient in escape technique and life-saving to send the letter back to the mountain. Fortunately, although the development of the situation was not particularly smooth, it was still controllable. Now, even if the action of the two junior brothers was not smooth, and the letter for help could not be sent back to the mountain, more than half of the people in the Blessed Fountain base had already gathered. As long as these people could be led back to the mountain, it could be considered as a victory. Now that he heard that the two junior brothers had successfully sent the letter for help, Ouyang Shang finally let out a deep sigh of relief. Along the way, as the big brother, he shouldered the heavy pressure that made him deeply tired. The unpredictable enemy, the terrifying black tide of the demon race, and the lives of more than 100 brothers and sisters all had to be shouldered. And at this time he was just a young man who had just achieved the king pill. Fortunately, this difficult test eventually came to the end. After 3 days, the reinforcements will arrive, so everyone must be careful in these 3 days, don't fall before dawn. After giving a brief explanation to Yang Fei, Kai Xia, and the other people in charge of Blessed Fountain base, Ouyang Shang returned to his room to rest. He was really tired all the way here. But when he opened the door, he saw that there was already someone in the room. Seeing that person, Ouyang Shang could not help but smile bitterly. "Junior brother Wang Lu is really energetic, aren't you tired?" Wang Lu said, "I'm as tired as a dog, so I came here to relax." "Junior brother, if you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to talk about leisure." Wang Lu said, "Hey, I was thinking that since it's rare for me to have a break, I might as well show some affection to you." But since you're so against the pure friendship between the same sex, I can only— Ouyang Shang could not bear to listen any longer and quickly interrupted. What do you think about the reinforcements that will arrive in 3 days? Wang Lu sighed and said, of course there is. I came to find you not only for leisure but also to discuss this matter. According to the original timeline, the Lingjian school was completely annihilated. And because I know this, I've always opposed the idea of bringing the elders here. Unfortunately, with the change of the situation in the end, we still walked on the old road. Although we have done enough safety measures after all, we still have to bear great risks. Ouyang Shang said, in the face of such a powerful enemy, there's no reason not to take risks. Now that the black tide has been sealed by you, and after several confrontations with the enemy, although the other party's means are mysterious, it's obviously impossible for them to completely annihilate the elders of Spirit Sword sect. Reasonably, we don't need to worry about this for no reason. From the moment you came here, the historical line has already undergone irreversible changes. Wang Lu nodded. Let's put this issue aside for the time being. Let's discuss the next issue. These 3 days will be very difficult for everyone. The more than 50 people in Blessed Fountain Base seem to be powerful, but under the pervasive infiltration of the opponent, the more people there are, the more flaws there will be. The move to protect Lu Xian can't be repeated. If there's a slight mistake, the more than 50 people will be in chaos. Even if you and I take action, I'm afraid it will be difficult to suppress it. Ouyang Shang nodded. That's right. So just now, I have asked Yang Fei to bring his junior brother who is good at array arrangement to reinforce the Blessed Fountain Base, and with the demon artifact enchantment left by the Flood Dragon? Wang Lu interrupted. No matter how impregnable Blessed Fountain Base is after all, it's only from the hands of our group of young people who have reached the highest level of King Pill. When we were in Ghost Weeping Forest, we couldn't prevent the other party's infiltration, so it's also impossible to be sure when we return to Blessed Fountain. Ouyang Shang sighed. I know, that's why I also asked Kai Xia to make other arrangements. Strict internal management, strict monitoring of every disciple. The idea is right, but I always feel that the strength of the means is not enough. Ouyang Shang said. It's not safe to rely on junior sister Kai Xia and the others alone, so after a short rest I plan to personally come out to inspect the base. Blessed Fountain Base was expanded on the basis of the Dragon Palace. The original master of this place has many subordinates, and the scale of the Dragon Palace is huge. Can you guarantee that there will not be any blind spots? It's not enough even if you add me. In my opinion, it's better for you to come out and order everyone to gather in the hall of the Dragon Palace, and then you and I will arrange an array in the hall to limit everyone to a square grid of 1 square foot. Within 3 days of the arrival of the Elder, everyone must stay in the grid and must not use external spells. If there is any violation, they will be regarded as being possessed by the demon race, and everyone will attack together. Ouyang Shang said with a wry smile, this method of yours is completely unconventional. If it's really implemented in sequence, it can indeed eliminate the chaos caused by the demon race's possession to the greatest extent. But this is tantamount to questioning that all the junior brothers and sisters here can't be trusted, planting the seeds of doubt first. Wang Lu said, originally they can't be trusted. In theory, even you and I are not trustworthy. It's just that no one is qualified to question you and me now. And big brother, with our tacit understanding, don't tell me that you haven't thought of this before. Being questioned by Wang Lu like this, Ouyang Shang could only respond in silence. Don't be shy. Before I came, you didn't even lock your own door. It's clear that you were waiting for me to come. Ouyang Shang still didn't speak, just silently took half a step back, a little further away from Wang Lu. Hey, it's very easy to cause misunderstandings if you try to cover up like this. In any case, just say it or not. Ouyang Shang pondered for a moment. 2 problems. One is that this matter really shouldn't be handled by me. I know, of course, this kind of proposal that offends people should be said by me. Later, I will call everyone for a meeting. I will be responsible for the proposal. You don't have to say anything. Naturally, there will be people who will come forward to support it. You can trust your junior brothers and sisters on this point. Ouyang Shang smiled bitterly again. This kind of politician's trick of using other people's trust is really disgusting. Wang Lu backhanded a plate of vinegar peanuts. If it's disgusting, you can eat something sour, but things have to continue. Let's eat and talk. In times of crisis of trust, it is necessary to set up an unquestionable idol, and this idol is none other than you. But the second problem is more troublesome. Using the array to restrict everyone's movement can certainly protect the internal security, But once the enemy invades from the front, people who are restricted in the grid will inevitably be passive. So I suggest that you leave me to guard the outside. You really dare to mention it? If it were someone else, I would have some doubts just based on this proposal alone. Wang Lu said, so the position of guarding the door is none other than me. Among all of us, I have the highest resistance to external invasion. If the demons could control me, they would have already made me commit suicide to erase the mark of the black tide. Since I can jump around until now, it proves that their infiltration is ineffective against me, so it's safer for me to guard the door. Well, I know. Well, as you say, I will call a plenary meeting later. You prepare for the proposal. Haha, it's to prepare for the rolling eyes. At the plenary meeting, Wang Lu was indeed greatly questioned. His first proposal was quickly passed, but there was no progress on the second issue. In a special period, everyone should be confined in the main hall and isolated by the grid array. Although this method is a bit rough, it can be regarded as an effective means to protect everyone. Although I am indeed a bit unhappy about this, I have no objection. My question is, why is it that even Big Brother is within this restriction, but you can run outside the hall without being restricted? Kai Xia's righteous question was approved by many disciples of Spirit Sword sect. I know you're strong, even stronger than eldest senior brother. However, trust has nothing to do with strength. We trust eldest senior brother because we need someone who can shoulder everyone's trust, and eldest senior brother is the most suitable candidate for this position. As for you, we don't even know who you are. Wang Lu opened his mouth, but just as he was about to speak, he was choked back by Kai Xia. Don't use the illegitimate child of the sect leader to perfunctory us. Only that idiot Ouyang Shang would believe that kind of idiotic reason. Ouyang Shang tilted his head. I say, Kai Xia, shut up. Kai Xia's attitude was firm, so it was inconvenient for Ouyang Shang to speak. However, after thinking about it, Wang Lu really couldn't find a reasonable explanation. It was not impossible to expose the identity of a time traveler, but in fact, this reason was more bizarre than illegitimate child, and only Ouyang Shang could accept it without any obstacle. If it was Kai Xia. Enough. In the end, it was Ouyang Shang who came forward and suppressed Kai Xia's doubt with the authority of the Big Brother. If you still regard me as the Big Brother, then there's no need to discuss this matter anymore. When the elders come, we will give everyone an explanation. What do you think, junior sister Kai Xia? When it came to this, Kai Xia could not be stubborn and had to reluctantly agree. For the next 3 days, the disciples of Spirit Sword sect were in a state of panic, jittery at the slightest sound, and miserable. Wang Lu, who was guarding outside the Dragon Palace, was even more tense, not daring to relax for a moment. However, surprisingly, in these 3 days, the demon race never made their move, not even the slightest probe, which completely turned the high vigilance of the disciples of Spirit Sword sect into a false alarm. When the light of dawn rose from the horizon on the 4th day, Wang Lu couldn't believe that 3 days had passed. Wait a minute, 3 days have passed. Wang Lu suddenly thought of a huge blind spot, and a layer of cold sweat appeared on his back. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.